Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's Midweek Geek. I am the Old Geek, and I am joined by familiar faces and familiar voices in the form of Mage's Musings and Elfbait. Good evening, fellas.
Hello!
Mage, the voice has come back.
Coming back, yeah. I can't sustain it, but I can do it a little while now, so videos are coming.
As with the last few weeks, we are simultaneously streaming this on all three of our channels. So if you haven't already done so, if you're going to drop a like on mine, drop a like on Elfbait's and Mage's channels, and vice versa. If you're gonna drop a like on Mage's, then come to mine and drop it there as well. Oh, I can hear myself in my. I can hear my. I could hear myself in my ear then. I was just aware that I was still logged into one of your two channels.
Oh,
that was very confusing.
Yeah.
It's the old Geek cinematic universe across many different...
The multiverse, yes.
The multiverse.
Yes, I was delayed. I was about 10 seconds behind, and it was all confusing. Very confusing.
It's multiverse of madness, a whole new meaning.
Next thing you know, we'll be one of those YouTube networks. I've seen that forming where multiple YouTube channels form together into sort of a network of syndicate of sorts and collectively banner themselves under something.
What would we call this channel?
I have no idea.
Ye old mate, was it the old Mage Bait?
Ye old elf musings.
Elf musings.
Geek elf musings.
Talking gaming stuff.
Yes,
I don't know.
Yes.
But no, it's something I have noticed out there is multiple YouTube channels teaming up. So
I suppose it's a way to go, isn't it? Because there's only so much of an audience out there, and there are channels popping up all the time. I notice that I've always tried to, when I picked the times for my streams, I did try to pick times that people I was familiar with weren't streaming, but I've noticed that a lot of other people don't always give that same degree of concern, that they stream when they feel like it.
Yeah,
which is fair enough. I mean, who might say when someone can and can't stream? But if everyone ends up competing against each other for what is, and let's face it, we are an aging audience, aren't we? We are.
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, why are we competing anyway? You know, there's no competition.
We're not competing, are we?
We aren't, but
no. But there will be competition out there. Anyway, gonna say hello to chat. Hello, chat types. Halakar was the first one to pop in, then Kelsey Kearney. Is that really Kelsey, or is that Daniel moonlighting as Kelsey? Grumpy Old Slan has already said hello on all three channels. RW Bishops lurking around, and we've got Crafting Gamer, Redfield RE, we've got Gene from Inksplat Records, and Earthbound Misfit, all having said hello.
So Redfield just said he subbed to all of us, so thank you, Redfield.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's absolutely wonderful. Wonderful. We'll go through our usual sort of traditional start, where we have a brief chat about our games that we've had recently. Thursday's game didn't happen for me, Shadow of the Demon Lords, because only myself and the DM were available, and the other two players weren't. So that didn't happen. It's not happening tomorrow either, because the DM isn't available tomorrow. Friday, does Friday count as gaming? It does, really, doesn't it? We were playing a solo module online. Probably my most successful stream of recent times, it was a real surprise success.
Even if the module wasn't very good. Pause. Crafting Gamer gifted Geek memberships.
Oh! Thank you, Crafting Gamer. Thank you indeed. I can't see it on here. I can't see it. So if you've just turned green and received a little bonus from Crafting Gamer, then be sure to say thank you.
Thank you, Gamer. Green with envy.
Green with envy, indeed. Then we played quite a long session, didn't we, on Saturday? How long was it? About 6 or 7 hours? OOSE game?
I think so. I cut out around. I left what was 2:30, 3 o'clock, but I think you guys went on for another hour or so.
Yes. Yeah, we basically went on until the riddles puzzle was solved.
Right.
I will admit, I was sat here with my head in my hands on occasions. I didn't think the puzzle was all that difficult. And when
puzzles are never difficult once you know the answer. There's always a face palm. It's I should have got that, but sometimes you're in the moment and you can't just put the piece together.
No, that's true. That's true. But there was one point when they were talking about let's go and search everywhere for secret doors for another route through, and all I was thinking was, no, there's only one route through left now. You've been everywhere. You've just got to solve this puzzle now. And it seemed like complete procrastination. Do everything but try and solve the puzzle. It is always easy for the creator. The puzzle was it is a Christmas themed dungeon. And they'd found 6 little wooden figurines. And then they found 6 shelves. And they put the elf figurine on the shelf and said, and a voice says, "What do you see?" And someone said the phrase, "elf on a shelf." At which point, the figurine fused with the shelf. What they had left were shelves with a cart on it, a hut, a hemisphere, a face, and I can't remember what the other one was. It'll come to me. And I dropped in some notes, some clues to say they found a skeleton figurine. The skeleton is undead. A bird figurine. They found that the bird was a sparrow. There was another clue which said the mug is a flagon. There was a gnome, and there was a oaken cudgel or mace. And what they had to do was they had to put the sparrow on the arrow and say sparrow on an arrow. Put the mug on the cart and say flagon on a wagon. Put the skeleton on the hut and say dead on a shed or undead on a shed.
You should have put a toilet. It would be a bone on a throne.
Bone on the throne. Yeah. And there was gnome on a dome for the gnome on the hemisphere. And what was the other one? Was that all of them? I think that was all of them. And I did, gnome on a dome. Yeah. I didn't think it was the hardest, given that Elf on the Shelf had happened. But it felt to me like I didn't want to solve it.
I'll have you know, I spend no time on shelves. Thank you very much. But,
no, your avatar is clearly bait giving hate.
Yes.
I had thought about dragon on a wagon, but I had various options I could have put there.
Those are fun ones. My brain wasn't working. I was just thinking. That's why I took the half orc, because low intellect, and I hadn't slept much, so it was like that's my excuse for being dumb.
Dragon on a wagon is what you do when you're cruel and you make it be an actual dragon that they have to get to sit on a wagon. So.
Yeah, I mean, Jane. There's other Christmas-related sayings. But it was one of those things. I was sat there just thinking to myself, "Come on." But it's all done now. Wizard in a Blizzard would have been a good one. Yeah. It's all done now. They've got the route open to the proper level 2 of the dungeon. So next time we'll be doing that. And the map is being made. That's the map I'm not keeping it still because I don't want you to see it all.
Oh, don't worry. I'll go back and freeze frame later.
Oh, yeah. I was moving it quite quickly.
High def.
And then on Monday we played. I've already explained to Mage. We played a 5th edition game where I think the DM made a bit of a cock up. I think the DM made a little bit of a cock up. But he was a wife with a knife. That's a really scary one. That should never be allowed. But anyway, have any of you played any games in the last week or so?
My whole weekend was all OSE all the time.
Marvelous.
My regular Friday night OSE met up for the first time in a while because I had to cancel the last couple of games because I was sick. And then Saturday morning I played your game. And then Sunday was a Splinter OSE group, sort of a special session, because one of my existing semi-regular now guest players, his wife wanted to join us on one of the canceled games, but she can't normally come on Friday. So I was like, well, they'll do a special session. I'll come to you. These are people I used to play Rifts with like 35 or 27 years ago, and she stopped playing when they had kids. And so she was really excited to try again. So I was like, yeah, I'll come to you. We'll do a special session where I bring this stuff to you. And so we had that game. So that was entertaining. The two characters, my friend and his wife, both playing clerics of the same faith, and both bickering like a married couple in game. It was very funny. So that was the OSC goodness. And then Monday I did my regular 5th ed game. Here comes the cough again. Damn it. Which was entertaining. As I was saying pre-show, one of the characters who was torn to shreds by ghouls last week had his new character torn to shreds by ghouls. One of the ghouls being the ghoulified form of his previous character. So that got a big laugh out of everybody because he had just coincidentally placed himself in the perfect place to be swarmed, to be jumped by those two ghouls, and the dice rolls were against him. So now he's a wizard with 4 hit points in 5th edition.
Oh, right. Just to comment, Gene, the mistake the DM made, there's no problem with beefing up enemies if the party are plowing through everything. And that's often what happens. 5th edition doesn't scale all that well when you're trying to run sort of a sandboxy game. And it can, as Alpha said many times, it can be hard to consistently challenge your party. But what he did is he gave one of the enemies this dominate ability that went way above and beyond the very high level spell of domination, which the spell specifies that you've got to be able to see your target, and he ignored that. He used it to dominate our party's thief, who was well hidden and in a silent location, in an area which the DM had already said had got a silence effect on it, and basically slaughtered the thief. Had the thief almost pretty much ritually slaughtered. So it was a little bit of an odd move. Anyhow,
no gaming for me. I didn't actually run my game on Monday. I took the night off. So,
fair enough.
Yeah. I just wasn't feeling like running game, so I figured better to not run when I'm not feeling it than run a horrible game. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't feeling bad or anything. I just wasn't in the mood. And I'm like, probably not a good idea to run it.
That's fair enough. Fair enough. But now you're here talking to us.
Oh yeah.
And
that game's kind of in a weird place where I've sort of got to catch up to what my players have been deciding to do anyways. This whole romp on trying to involve Bahamut into the storyline is completely of their devising. I've just made it fit like a good DM should. Like, all right, you're going to go and try and find a way to talk to the dragon god to try and get him to intercede. Okay.
That'll always go well, won't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
At least I try and talk to a good guy.
But yeah, it's kind of funny because they started out. The whole goal was you have to go stop this dragon, this ancient white dragon, and the threat was there's this ancient red dragon sitting on your doorstep telling you have to go stop the ancient white dragon. And so then they found out what the ancient white dragon was doing, and they're like, they decided that they couldn't take her on and that they needed help, and then they ended up deciding that that help was going to be to reach out to the king of dragons, good dragons, and see if he could help them. And yeah, I had sort of, fortunately, I keep my game world with places that are mapped out but undeclared, like they have a name, but why they're that doesn't work. So now I have a reason for the sunken lands to be the sunken lands, and that's where they're headed. So
Dungeon Minister, watch all three of us have 3 windows on at the same time and watch us in triplicate and get badly synchronized voices speaking in, what's it called? There's mono, there's stereo, and what's 3 at a time called?
Oh,
Anybody know?
Surround. We'll call it surround.
Surround sound. Yes.
exactly.
Right. Anyway, we have a topic for tonight, and it is basically the price of our hobby.
0 to too much.
0 to too much. Yes. So I'm going to ask a very personal question of you two to start with. How much do you reckon you've spent on gaming in the last 12 months?
No, I don't know. Oh, last 12 months. I think that's a lifetime.
Last 12 months? Under 1,000, and probably under 500. So I'm really in a slowdown. So I mean, if I'm counting all my gaming, not just tabletop, carry the 12. No, no, but no.
Multiply by the thumb.
Probably probably just a couple $100 in the last 12 months. But then again, I've also in the last year I bought a house, moved across country, and have been dealing with all that. So I bought some mini stuff. I bought some rule sets for miniature stuff. I bought a couple of supplements for tabletop RPGs. So yeah, a couple $100.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. I think that's a fair
Truer
comment,
words were never spoken, Padre.
Mage, but what about you? Are you?
I'm going to estimate about $500 in the past year because I did contribute to the Kickstarter for OSE last year. So that's a big chunk of that. But aside from that, I haven't bought a lot. Although I did spend $150 on the weekend. On Facebook Marketplace, there was a guy downtown selling some old stuff, and there was one item I particularly wanted, so I went down, and then like he was trying to, like a pervert trying to lure a kid with candy, he's like, oh, I have other stuff, would you like to come in?
Yes.
It's like I could not resist. So
reminds me of the time we bought Warhammer miniatures out of the back of a Jeep. But
So I was looking at this other stuff that he had, and I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, a couple of things I wouldn't mind here. And so yeah, so the one thing I went for, I took obviously, and then he had a couple other things that I've actually been looking for these. So and he was offering.
We need to get
price.
The conversion right though, because obviously £1 at the moment is about $1.30 US dollars, and what's that in Canadian?
It's probably about $1.60, I think.
Okay,
ish.
Now, for me, obviously, I do have this channel as an income stream. It doesn't make a great deal, but I have a good excuse to try and to justify purchases, because I'm simply reinvesting what I'm given, what I get from adverts being shown, what I get from anyone donating memberships and whatever. And I'd originally planned when I monetized to say, okay, that's my budget. Whatever I get is my budget. To say I've overspent that budget is an understatement. I have a new computer sat in my attic waiting for a replacement motherboard to arrive because it was a refurbished computer and it turned out that one of the RAM slots in the motherboard was faulty. That was £200. I've bought some extra RAM to go in there to put to. I was always going to do that anyway because I bought the cheapest computer I could find that had got a half decent power supply, decent size case, and a decent processor. I've got a new graphics card to go into it, which I say new, second-hand one. So I'm estimating that's when all that's done and dusted, that's going to be about £300. But that's for the purpose of the channel. I'm going to be using that for streaming and doing this sort of stuff on it because it's a lot more powerful than what I'm using at the moment. I did buy a full set of OSE books from Gene a couple of months ago. That was my last big purchase. I constantly plunder eBay for whatever I can find in terms of bargainous books. I'm very, very frugal with that, though. I'll go on, find something I like, place a bid that's under the market average, and then walk away and leave it. And if I happen to get it, I get it. But no, there's no eBay seller that's going to make any profits out of me. But I have got the UK Games Expo coming up at the start of next month. Last time I went to one of those, it cost me in the region of £400 in terms of buying things I really don't need to buy.
Well, isn't 300 that the entry fee to get into the expo?
It's about £20 a day. I'll spend about £15 on game sessions typically. I'll browse those when I'm there, but my weakness is the bring and buy that they've got there with a lot of secondhand stuff, and I just tend to go a bit mad at that.
Right.
Though we have got a lot of board games from last time I went, we still haven't played, and that was 3 years ago. So I'm not going to go for board game. I will be looking specifically for supplements for the games I'm running. But I don't know if I've shown this on stream before. My gaming pencil case that I bought on a whim, simply because the woman behind the counter was appealing.
Your wife doesn't watch the stream, does she?
No, she doesn't. No. But yeah,
that's a
I
good
do spend
thing.
Yeah, but when you're paying £5 or £6 for a beer, £10 for a burger or a hot dog or something like that, it does mount up. It's expensive. It's expensive.
The last convention I went to, we picked up a trick. We used to go as a group, like 4 of us would just get one room and like with 2 beds, and then 2 people would sleep on the floor, and we kind of trade nights who got to sleep on the bed. But we found that if we told them that one of us was diabetic and needed to have a mini fridge in the room, we could get the mini fridge at no extra charge, and nobody was going to look at us and think that at least one of us wasn't diabetic. So we just fill it full of healthy food. Flat of water in the room, lunch meat in the fridge, cheese, stuff like that, and keep from having to buy all the expensive stuff. Occasionally, every night we'd go out for dinner, but like you'd go up to the room, grab a snack, make a sandwich, because you'd have mayo and stuff like that. That saved us so much money, because otherwise it's like, I'm going to buy this, $12 personal pizza, off the revolving cart and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, the food at the UK Games Expo is quite nice. They've got these various gourmet vans, best way to describe them. They're all outdoor sort of
food trucks.
But they're pretty good. You get Thai, you get Indian, you get Chinese, you get English, you get American style burgers, but none of them are cheap.
I imagine the convention that we used to go to has got to have a great food scene now, because it was down in the Portland area, which is like food truck central on the West Coast these days. So,
yeah. But I'm not even going to dare estimate what I've spent in the last year. I've bought the One Ring hardback second edition, the Conan hardback. I've bought a number of Call of Cthulhu things. I've bought some AD&D stuff off eBay. I've bought dice. I've got paid subscriptions to some things. I mean, 2 months of StreamYard was $50.
Yeah.
Which is £40. And
Yeah, I didn't consider subscriptions, but still, I'm probably not over a couple $100.
Does stuff we bought with a gift card count?
No.
I was going to say the last $75 I spent was based on stuff I got from work. Like they give us gift card. I got $75 in gift cards from work, so they bought me 3, Wild West buildings. So
yeah, I just remembered somebody gave me $100 drive-through RPG gift card, and I used that to get some print-on-demand modules.
Slan, you can, yes. They run a lot of the the organized play games in the hotel section at UK Games Expo, and that's when it can get quite expensive because there's a nice little gap between sessions. And whenever I've done the Cthulhu Masters, there's always time to go to the bar beforehand, and there's a few tables where they've lined up their pints ready for the session.
We'll have to do a show on conventions. I haven't gone to many, but I have some fun stories from them.
Yeah.
I got this psychic wave. I think Saxius is yelling at us.
Get on topic. We are. Anyway, okay. Right, yeah, there's that statement then. Tabletop role-playing games. It's a cheap hobby. What's the answer to that?
It's both true and false.
Correct. End of stream.
End of stream.
I was just going to say, once you know what you're doing with the hobby, it can be super cheap.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you know where to look, you can play it almost utterly for free.
Well, and
yes.
you can. I mean, I'll go so far as to say is once you know how games are put together, you can make your own rules super easy. We used to do it back in high school all the time. In fact, we even had in junior high, we had our own universal system that we would use to adapt like our favorite cartoons and stuff to tabletop RPGs. You want to do He-Man? Okay, cool. We want to do Transformers? Awesome. We're going to do G.I. Joe tomorrow. Yeah. And we just had this one system that we did. It was a base 10, using D10s type of a game.
The caveat there is, of course, you're likely to spend a fair amount of money learning to get to that point where you can make your own game.
Yeah. I mean, you figure, if it was junior high, I'd only been playing for about 7 years in games, and pretty much D&D, Top Secret, Gamma World, Star Frontiers. So
I'm going to say it in the longer term, it depends on whether you start GMing or not, because typically players can, more often than not, may get themselves they don't always even have to always get themselves a player's handbook.
Yeah, they get their dice and that's it.
Yeah, a good part of that too is going to be how quickly or readily you adopt homebrewing.
Yeah.
Me being mostly a homebrew GM most of my gaming career, I've never felt the pull to buy everything that came out. I have bought a lot of stuff in the past, but the longer time goes on, I'm like, I just need the core and maybe a few modules or expansion source books, so I know how things are put together, and then the rest of it I just go from there. I have yet to run anything out of print for Call of Cthulhu, for example, or 5th edition.
You've never run anything in print for either of those. So you've got the core books, but
yep, I got the core books, and I've got access to some old stuff to where I can look at it. But for the most part, Yeah, it's just a crazy idea and a stat block. That's all I've really run it. I've never been a huge module guy or running printed material anyway. So for me, it's always been a super cheap hobby. I mean, I do spend way too much on it, but it's been probably cheaper for me than it has been for a lot of people because of home brewing. So.
And I guess a part of it is, what kind of ratio do you get to versus how much you spend versus how much time you play, right?
Yeah,
Like if you're
that's the
buying books
value
every day,
decision right there.
yeah,
Cost versus value.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, for example, a lot of video games, a lot of people think nothing of spending 30, 40, 50 pounds on the latest video game, which can possibly be completed in 20 or fewer hours.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, often it's a lot less than that, but you're looking at a cost per hour basis. Then even if you're buying official books, you should get a lot more value out of them.
Yeah, and I know there's the old, you see it often said a lot. Well, back in the day, these books were only this much. Yes, but you have to adjust
Inflation.
for dollars. Because I did that math for somebody once. It's like, yes, the old Monster Manual was not a $50 book, but in the money of its time, it was a $32 book or so, and it was a smaller book with lesser production values than they put into the current books. But I know, for example, as a parent, a night at the movies and dinner for my family provided far less entertainment. Now, granted, there's memories and all of that and stuff involved, than spending the same amount of money on gaming stuff. Like if I spent, the $200 that a night out with the family would and the movies with the family would cost, which is why we didn't have many of those, because I don't have that kind of money to throw around. But I'm just saying, if I took that and poured it into gaming, I'm playing for months and months and months, with my family because they're gamers. Yeah. If I were to put it into that, but it's just, if you compare the cost of gaming to other things, other entertainments, it's actually pretty good value.
Unless, of course, you get into the more expensive side of things, which we'll come to later, which is collecting. But I mean, I will say now that with my old Friday group, some of them have dropped money on various bits and pieces. But there was one guy in the group who, I think, in the 5 years he was playing with us on almost every Friday night, he never bought a rule book of any sort. Couldn't be persuaded to do that at all. He bought one set of dice. He borrowed pencils. He used character sheets that I printed out for them. And I think he might have bought one miniature. And yet he thought he thought nothing of turning up for every game session carrying a Subway foot-long meal deal, which he probably spent £10 on, and phoning up a local dessert takeaway to have a grossly overpriced milkshake and waffle dessert delivered at about 11 o'clock in the evening.
Hey,
So
if you're not spending it if you're not spending it on gaming stuff, you can afford good snacks. Like my buddy who used to bring bottles of mead and stuff to game. So.
He'd spend about £15-20 a week on takeaway food, but you couldn't get him to buy anything gaming related, apart from one set of the most garish looking dice you could ever imagine, and one miniature. And even then, he had to prize the money out of his fingers for the minute. I bought the miniatures on the proviso that they were all gonna be. Slan, I don't think you want to share his sandwich with him. But some people buy things to share. I mean, yes, he would occasionally buy a pack of the Subway cookies and put them in the middle of the table, which is That's fine. That's fine. Um, so it's an odd one because you do find some players who are unwilling to invest in physical products and they moan about the cost of the books. And yet you look at the other things they're spending money on and it feels a little bit weird because you get so much more value out of the book.
Yeah. You eat that sandwich and it's gone, and 5 of those sandwiches is a book. Yeah.
Yeah. Mobius, it wasn't a problem at all. I never complained about it. I'm just making it a point of it for the purpose of this stream. So for him, I don't think it mattered whatever he'd have been doing on a Friday night, he'd have been spending that money on takeaway food. So I would say his 5 years of gaming cost him a set of dice and a miniature. So Ian never had any intention of being a DM of any sort. He was a permanent player, and it just makes the point that if you're a player who you can play for next to nothing for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you could really never spend any money as a player if you wanted to with the right group.
Show up. Most people have extra dice. I've never seen a group that won't loan dice to somebody who needs them.
If you're playing with a friend group, people probably have extra books that they're even willing to let you use, take home, read.
Well, that's the case with me. I mean, I have all the books and I have multiple copies. Like when we have the AD&D game, not everybody has the books. I have the beat up copy that I don't mind gets trashed. I hand it out to the table. Here you go.
That's why I always pick up used copies of books. Like I showed off a while back the many beat up copies of the AD&D PHB I have because I have them to lend.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is in better condition, but these are ones I picked up off of the the grab bag table at a convention, or one of them even came in a mystery bag of gaming stuff.
That's probably my most beat up book. It's not too bad. But that's
my most beat up is my DMG, manual. But then again, it also took a topple into a muddy ditch one night, but it's still in great condition.
But tying back to the topic, it did cost me money to get all those beat up copies to hand out at the table.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
A lot of mine came to me with no charge or very minimal charge. I also have a buddy whose wife is so adept at thrift shopping. She's one of those people who can thrift store shop as if she was shopping actual retail. She just always seems to have that knack for finding it. And so you tell her like, hey, I'm on a lookout for this, or I'll get my buddy will be out with her and he'll send me a picture. That's how I got my Birthright box set. He's like, hey, want this? I'm like, yes. And I open it up and it's not just the box set, but like 4 extra supplements also in the box. But
if the point about the play, if you want to be a player in a game, you can just if you've got access to the internet and a phone, you can play completely free using dice rolling apps, Discord, Roll20. You don't even need you have a free subscription to Roll20, and you can play forever for absolutely nothing. So, gaming can be the single cheapest hobby on the planet. On the other side of the equation is if you decide to run games. If you decide to run games, then the creators of the games know that you are typically the one who's going to be spending money.
But even so, you can run games inexpensively. There are free assets. There are free things to get. You can make your own if you're adept. So, but yes, I would posit the DMs generally spend the most money, at least on the supplies.
And it was one of the problems that TSR had, wasn't it? That they specifically targeted DMs with almost every product they released.
Yeah, it's also informed the product range for 5th edition. And with Hasbro, that's why everything has player content in it, and why there's been a massive bloat in player content because they want to try and get and reasonably so, they're trying to get the other 75%, 80% of their customers buying more
Buying
product.
stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
Which is what you do when you're a business.
Yes. Yes.
I think that's why TSR had such a hard time, I think, being profitable, honestly, is that they never really figured out how to maximize their sales, because the nature of the game is such that you don't have to people, as we're saying here, people don't have to spend proportionately for their engagement in the game.
No. So, then we come into something that does tend to grab people as they get older. And that is that nostalgia, that collection urge, that wanting to recreate what you had when you were a kid. And the cost of building up a collection. First one's free, kid. Yes, Kabuki Kid. Yes, that's right. That's probably what I fall foul of. I look at things on eBay and I think, I had that when I was younger. I want to have it again. And I dread to think how much I've spent on old Merc modules and old D&D modules from eBay. Now, if I know you Elfbait, you don't run printed stuff at all, but do you ever have the collection urge?
For me, it's actually more about getting a hold of things that I was never able to get when I was a kid. Things that I missed out on, either I ignored, or like my big thing a while back was picking up a lot of the little micro games that came in little poly bags. The little micro war games that, like, Steve Jackson's Ogre started out and stuff. If you're not a miniatures or a war gamer, may not mean much to you, but those are things that were way off my radar back when I was a kid because they seemed weird and cheap because they were just in little poly bags. But turns out there was a whole universe of really detailed, complex war games that were out at the time. And that's kind of where I am. I'm like, things that I couldn't get when I was a kid is what I tend to lean towards, or things that I've sold off and in the past because I was stupid and want to get back.
Yeah.
Like,
I've come to the realization that I shouldn't be getting rid of stuff because I always regret it down the road.
Oh,
yes.
I will never do that again. And at the same time, I'm slowing down on what I accumulate, because I look at all the stuff I have and I'm like, I don't use any of this stuff.
Yes, Earthbound Misfit fighting fantasy books do count, and I am trying to build a collection of those as well. So I don't.
That's one of those things. I had the full set of 1 to 30, and then you outgrow them, and then it's like, all right, you might as well get rid of them. And then you start thinking about it. It's kind of fun to read one of those again.
Yeah,
they're long gone, and to recover them is like $30 a piece.
30? How much?
I was looking at Craigslist or Kijiji. There was a guy nearby me. He's got like masses of them. He charges like $30 a piece.
You don't have to pay that. You don't have to.
I don't plan to.
No. What I do is every couple of weeks I go onto eBay. I do a search for fighting fantasy. I watch anything that's got an auction start of less than £2 or £3, including postage. And if they're still like that with a couple of days to go, I'll drop a few bids on anything I haven't got. The most I've paid for any of my fighting fantasy books is that mint Shamutanti Hills one, which cost me £8, which is about $12 in your money. So most of them are costing me £3.
The guy I just mentioned, he's got a pristine copy of the, I don't know if you remember the 2-player fighting fantasy book where you play the brothers. I always loved that one. I had that one as a kid. He's charging $120 for it.
How much?
Oh, 120 Canadian. So it's probably like $2 American, but still,
What's that one called?
I can't remember what it's called. It's there came a box set of 2 books, and you play it. It's a 2-player book. One you play brothers, and then you do your own adventure, but occasionally you intersect and you discuss what decisions you want to make. I can't remember what it's called. Chat amongst yourselves while I do some Google.
But one thing that we are experiencing now is the significant inflation in the market for secondhand gaming stuff, because so many of us of this age are getting to that point in life where if we've got kids, they're more and more able to support themselves. If we've got a mortgage, we tend to be coming towards the end of it. We've got a little bit more disposable income. I know you're going to be an exception here, Elfbait, because you've recently moved, and we're all hitting this at the same sort of time, and we all feel that same pang of nostalgia, and thus the eBay prices are going up.
That's also converging with gaming being the cool thing, with a lot of younger people also buying into those markets. You could call it the hipster effect if you wanted to. You know, all those people like, yeah, I just picked up a set of original AD&D and it's all in pristine condition. It's going to sit on my shelf and I'm never going to look at it or touch it. But I mean, there's a lot of people still getting into it to play too. But that's like, I saw that as soon as D&D got popular, for example. Half Price Books was no longer a place I could go for cheap gaming stuff at all. Not just D&D, because suddenly they had buyers who were aware that there was a market for the stuff. So going in and coming out with a stack of old game books, for $30 was gone.
So the 2-player fighting fantasy, John, is called Clash of Princes.
Clash of Princes.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't got that book.
I always liked it as a kid because, when I had a friend who liked reading, yes, you could play it 2 players, and you'd put a little note of paper, and then in the book you could say, do you want to travel with your brother? And you would say yes, and if the other player said yes, then you would put a little note of paper, and it would indicate where you were supposed to go to, and one person could say no, and then you go your separate ways, but you always cross paths and have an opportunity to travel together. It was an interesting little book, or pair of books, I guess.
Okay, well, I've made a note of that one. I'll look that one up after the stream. But I think one of the big problems that we have is a lot of people are trying to flip the stuff for a profit on eBay, and they'll buy something and they'll list it thinking they can make a profit. So what you'll see is books appearing for stupid buy it now amounts. They're trying to play on people being impatient, and
it also has to be do with the market too. If there are people out there buying stuff just for the cool factor, they're willing to pay more.
Yes.
And where the money is, like where I moved from, the Seattle area, which is like the heart of Boeing and Microsoft, which has made a lot of money bouncing around there. The local shops, if you were just a casual Magic the Gathering player, for example, right, there was no way you could compete, because these guys would come in and their kids would come in with huge amounts of money from a comparative standpoint for disposable income than just a casual gamer. And that drove the market price way up. None of the shops were selling for anything that anybody who was just in it to play the game could afford to buy. So I think eBay is seeing something similar with the inflation of the popularity of the game, and then also just the growing collector market. People are like,
yes, just bear with me a moment.
They're striking while the iron is hot, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Kabuki Kid, sort of hopes to die with RPG books. We'll just take all your books and fashion them into a coffin. You'll be buried.
I've already left instructions with my wife to be turned into a set of dice for all my gaming buddies when I die.
Just had to close the door because My wife pushed it open, then decided to go into the daughter's room and have a conversation.
Right. I told my
Right,
niece that my D&D books are her inheritance, and
Oh.
if she doesn't make use of them or teach her kids how to play, I'm haunting them.
Well, anyway, the point I was going to make regarding eBay prices is people who don't really know the value of things will go onto eBay and search it, and they'll see these buy it now prices and assume that's how much
standard.
that's assume that's the going rate, and thus it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy in that more and more will be becomes an expected price. More and more will be listed at that sort of price, and that will naturally push prices up. We've got a local our local gaming store. It's in the next town. I went in there when it first opened, and he'd got this big rack of old gaming stuff. And I asked him, I picked out a few bits and bobs, and I said, they weren't priced up. I said, how much for this? And he looked at this particular book, and I knew I could get it for £6 on eBay. But this one he got here was in good condition. And he looked at it. He went to his computer. I know he was checking eBay or Amazon or something. And he went, oh, that's £30. That's what it's going for on eBay. And all he'd looked at was the buy it now price. I know which advert he'd seen, because I'd seen the same one and thought, what fool is going to pay that? A week later, I bought myself a copy for £6 from eBay. But that's how he was pricing them up in his shop, finding pretty much the highest buy it now price on eBay. And yes, he's got to make money from them, but I wouldn't buy anything from there. Not his secondhand stuff, because the difference between £6 and 30 is excessive. If he'd have said 10 for the condition it's in, then fine, I'd have had it. Wouldn't have minded. But so I think that's slightly damaging to our hobby in a way. The sort of the over reliance, and the amount of times I've seen people comment on the places like Facebook and Reddit saying, have you seen this advert? Have you seen how much things are going for now? Have you seen how much our hobby's costing? And I always have to reply with exactly the same thing. You're cherry picking one buy it now advert. If you actually spent any time searching or remotely use any patience at all waiting for an auction to come along, you'll find out that the auction price is half what this is advertised for.
Oh yeah, and a lot of this stuff engineered.
Sorry, go on.
Oh no, good. Go ahead.
I was just about to add that a lot of the stuff you're going to want to buy, you can probably get print on demand or PDF or whatever.
Yeah.
Dirt cheap. It won't be a vintage item, but it'll be serviceable to play.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, a lot of that market too is manipulated by the sellers. There's a lot of shenanigans that go in creating listings to drive the prices of eBay goods.
Yes.
And just all sorts of little weird shenanigans to get the price up there.
Yeah. There were certainly 3 or 4 names I saw cropping up on UK eBay over and over again. Relisted items, prices slowly creeping up and being relisted and relisted. Nothing was ever selling. It was the same item being relisted and relisted, testing the water with prices and I had heard that there's one of them who buys things, complains, often gets refunds, and then it gets relisted within a week or two at double what is paid for it.
Yeah.
Anyhow. So we've already pretty much answered this topic. So one of the things we've got nowadays that we never had, obviously, when we were kids, are things like digital subscriptions. What have you got digital subscriptions for, if anything?
Roll20. I do keep a Plus account, so that's what is it? $7 a month or something like that. $8 a month.
Right.
Yeah. As far as subscriptions that are for gaming, for role playing, I'll cut out miniatures stuff because that's a different hobby. I've got D&D Beyond. I'm still running that just because right now it's the only way I really have. Online is the only way I have to play, and I have so much stuff built on there that I keep that going. And then I've got a Dungeon Fog subscription, which increasingly I use it less and less than I use as I used to. They did an update recently that screwed up the interface, and so in fact it screwed up a bunch of my existing maps. But that's neither here nor there. Those are the only two real subscriptions that I've had for tabletop gaming. I try to avoid other subscriptions as I can. Like picked up Dungeon Draft and Wonder Draft, because those are one-time purchases and I don't have to worry about a monthly on those. And then I haven't bought into anything else like Roll20 or anything like that. I have a free account for that. So
I mean, I have got the upgraded Roll20 at the moment because I am using it. I'm using it for a number of games, and I couldn't get by with the storage levels on the free account because I'm the DM and I run games. It's one of those things about being a DM. We're the ones who do end up having to pick up the cost. I've got I've got an Incarnate subscription because I use that in the same way as you use Dungeon Fog, Wonder Draft, and all that sort of stuff. Well, I make my maps using Incarnate, which costs about £5 a month. Those are the only subscriptions I've got, though. I'm a bit tight with subscriptions.
Oh, absolutely. It's an ongoing expense. The only reason I upgraded my Roll20 is because I wanted to try out some of the other features, the dynamic lighting, and I needed a little extra storage for maps and pictures. And so it's like, all right, I'll bite for this one. And I mean, Roll20 is okay. I don't mind the interface. I just, I find it gets a little choppy and slow.
Yes.
But it still serves the purpose.
That's because, as we found out on Saturday, you've only got 4 gig of RAM in your computer.
Yes. I have a crappy old computer.
my 8 gig machine struggles at from time to time with that. But Foundry, Owen Al's mentioned Foundry. I looked into Foundry and I'm tempted by it, but I really want to move away from an online tabletop sort of simulator that is graphical. I tend to find that if you place more emphasis on what's going on screen on a map, it takes the attention away from what's being said. So when we're running OSE, the players do the players are keeping a map in Owlbear Rodeo, which, talking about slow, that goes like an absolute slug. But that's up to them. I'm not putting any effort into Owlbear Rodeo. It's up to the players. If they want to use it as the mapping tool, fine. But it's only used for very basic positioning. But I Foundry, and from what I've seen of it, it's very shiny and it's more than I'd want from any sort of way to play an online RPG. So do MMO subscriptions count here at all, or are they completely different genre entirely?
No, they are role-playing of its sort.
Of a sort, yes.
But I think we're talking about our tabletop specifically.
Yeah.
I briefly subscribed to Lord of the Rings Online, but it wasn't very long. Zoom license, yes, Ian. One of my players for a while did have a paid Zoom subscription, and Zoom is better than Discord. Zoom is so much more reliable. Discord drops out from time, it can get choppy. Whereas Zoom, we never had any issues whatsoever with it. It was so smooth and so easy. If I was ever going to pay for an online way of playing, it probably would be a Zoom subscription.
See, unlike you, I do like having the map. I like having the grid for tactics. I think the best is a blend of theater of the mind. So you definitely want a virtual tabletop that can handle what you need.
Yeah, I've gotten pretty far with just Owlbear Rodeo and the maps I draw, or even maps I pull. Even if I grab a Dyson logo map and throw it into Owlbear Rodeo, I can set the grid to match what I need, and then tokens, but if I need it. But that's about as far as I want to go with a tabletop. I don't need lighting and bells and whistles and all of that, so.
I do need to look more into Owlbear Rodeo. I'm not been particularly impressed by its speed in the couple of sessions I've seen.
It got real slow, real fast. I was surprised.
Really, really slow.
Never had a problem with the speed on it. My biggest problem is that it's browser based, and it's kind of tricky to actually don't ever clear your cache and cookies, or else you'll lose everything.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So that was the biggest problem I've had. Or like, I didn't even think about it when I had to replace my machine. I came back and went to play, and I'm like, and all my tokens are gone, and all my maps are gone, and so fortunately I have most of my tokens saved because I have a token folder on my computer when I make the tokens. But
and so we learned that free has a cost.
Well, there is a way to actually back up the thing. I just never. It's one of those things. Oh, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it, and I never do it.
Then I never do it.
Yeah. So when it bit me in the ass. So
chat have gone onto the subject of battle maps, and obviously, in terms of cost, if you're going to go down the battle maps, terrain, and miniatures route, that adds hugely to the cost of playing whatever game you're playing.
That was my last stream topic.
It was indeed.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, cheapest battle map, dollar store wrapping paper with the grid on the back and a Sharpie. Because the wrapping paper has a 1-inch grid on the back, and you can roll it out as much as you need.
But yeah, I mean, for me, playing on a battle map, I don't like it. So I suppose that saves me money. I've got lots of miniatures. We play a dry whiteboard, and we don't play with precise measurements. So that saves battle maps, and certainly terrain and things like that. I would actually if I turned up to a game and the DM was using lots and lots of that sort of dungeon terrain, I'd probably say thanks, but no thanks at that point, because it's not the game I want to play. Not the game I want to play at all. Sorry, DMs out there. If you put loads of nice terrain.
I am always impressed by the terrain. It's like it seems like too much effort. I have a battle mat. I have my Crayola washables. I have my little paper cutout minis, and that evokes everything that we need at the table. I don't need to see the AstroTurf to mimic the field. I don't need a castle built up, and it's very pretty. I give props to the artistry of people who do that. But to do that for every game and every scenario, and then that kind of limits your scenarios too.
Of course it does, yeah.
What the terrain will allow. Whereas, like I said, I've got a Crayola washable and a vinyl mat, and I have a metric for creating a random battlefield. It's like, okay, so I have everybody roll dice on the table, roll into the quadrants. All right, so these quadrants represent hills. Okay, done. Roll again. This represents the density of the forest. Then, it's a dense forest. I take a handful of little dice, I roll them out, and boom, now we have an instant forest with trees and whatnot. These dice are your trees. And here's your characters. Go.
I think with the cost and the time involved with terrain, you probably get to the stage where Chief Snurg of the Orcs mysteriously has a very similar castle to Lord Godfrey the Good Paladin.
Yeah. And this the if you're adding the miniatures and crafting side of things to your DMing repertoire, you are doubling or tripling your workload
and cost.
Well, yeah, we don't even get to the cost because but your workload alone is just going to go up. And then the one thing, like you were just mentioning with the similar castles, you are getting into that weird limitation on your brain of where you start to develop scenarios or encounters based on what you can put on the table as opposed to what you can imagine. Even subconsciously, it's just going to be there, so.
But I do like having the grid. Like, I don't like
Yeah.
pure theater of the mind. And that's why, I mean, a good fast and dirty grid is good enough so you can have the correct measurements. You can have positioning. Positioning is key. And I mean, the way I run Thieves as well, my Thieves players love it because now they understand how they can sneak, they can visualize, they can see it, as opposed to relying on me, on trusting me to say, no, they don't notice you. The enemy doesn't see you. They can see how they're able to get behind the enemies, and they take the time. So good balance. But yes, it does add to the cost. Even a battle mat, like the one I use, will run $40. Well, 40.
But
Canadian.
you'll use that over and over and over again.
Over and over again.
Because you use simple markers. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the way to use a battle mat and have it be on the cheap and have it be as versatile as your ability to render a map quickly.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I bought my battle mat 15 years ago. One-time purchase of $40 15 years ago.
Yeah. My miniatures are all for non-tabletop gaming, so they're the other hobby. So I don't count them as spent on RPGs. So otherwise, that's a lot more.
One of the players in the house we play at on Monday, the player who hosts was proudly showing off his new projector that he's using to show films and television in his lounge. Him and his fiance at the moment, but he was talking about using it for gaming purposes. And I have to admit that it doesn't appeal at all, not in the slightest, to have a map projected on the wall. Don't want it.
Yeah.
But I was a wimp. I bit my tongue and was like, "Oh, very nice." But, the cost very much depends on what game system you're running, and whether you want a visual representation, such as maps and miniatures. If you're running D&D 3.5 or 4th edition, you're pretty much going to need them or something. But a game like Call of Cthulhu, you don't need any of that at all. So there is an argument to be made. Your choice of system heavily affects your expected level of investment.
And that's fair. Some games lend themselves more to the theater of the mind approach.
Yes.
And yeah, will definitely reduce your costs.
I feel my experience has been the more high tech the setting, the more it requires some sort of grid. And the shootier a game gets, the more it requires some sort of visual representation because exact positioning becomes more important. So science fiction RPGs, modern setting RPGs or things like that, I find need grids and maps more than fantasy, at least in my experience, because like if you're playing Cyberpunk, for example, everybody's got a gun and a line of sight and you need to know exactly what that is.
I think it depends whether things like that line of sight are in the rules or not. If the game's trying to be simulationist, then
most of them tend to be, most science fiction games and modern where combat is is a large part of it tend to be pretty simulationist, even if they find ways to be abstract in that simulation. There's you still have more of that action going on, because in D&D, for example, you might still have missile combat, but it's definitely not happening on the scale of maneuver and tactical positioning and stuff like a modern combat game or a science fiction combat game might be doing, where everybody's running around and machine gunning and throwing grenades and firing rocket launchers and
Yeah. But I'm going to say now, Paranoia. Have you ever played Paranoia?
No.
Neither of you played Paranoia.
Nope.
Sci-fi game, lasers, guns, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but it's not on the same scale as a lot of the other ones that I'm thinking, like Traveler, Star Wars, Cyberpunk, Twilight 2000.
But this is why I say about the tone of the game and the nature of the rules, because Paranoia requires no tactics whatsoever. None whatsoever.
Yeah, because it's just slapstick goofiness. It's not about the precision.
Yeah. And that will forever be theatre of the mind, and it's perfect theatre of the mind fodder, because it's a game where you don't care if you die. If you do care if you die, you're playing the wrong game.
That is why I'm very careful to use terms like mostly and tend to be. Because there's always going to be an exception. But, for example, a science fiction game where that seldom comes up and where you can theater the mind of it very much is something like Alien, where you're not going to have a lot of big mass combats between armed opponents. Star Trek, because face it, what is the Star Trek trope? The biggest fights you've ever seen on the entire span of Star Trek shows have been space battles, but not counting space battles, with the actual character battles, it's a few people on a side that might be slinging phaser shots back and forth, and they aren't really moving much, so.
No.
But I guarantee you, if you get at a table with a bunch of people who are playing Twilight 2000, and whether or not they're veterans or not, they're going to be wanting to play combat, and they're going to be maneuvering and wanting to know exactly what the line of sight is and what kind of cover do I have, and da-da-da, So,
Dave, I hope the media you have been consuming has been from authorized sources. You do know that if you've been receiving unauthorized media, then that is treason. And what is the penalty for treason? That's Paranoia.
I don't know. Dave, are you really playing Paranoia, or is that what you just want us to think?
I need to play more Paranoia. I need to get more games of that going. I think a Paranoia game would be a good one for a live stream sometime. Maybe on a Friday night, if we can get people playing. That would be highly entertaining. Anyway, something for the future, perhaps. Something for the future. I did see something I wanted to refer to in terms of costs. Oh, yes. I used to work in a school, and one of the things I did was check up the printers and photocopiers, make sure they're all working. And I remember I was in the staff room, and I thought, now nobody around. I'll print out 10 copies of my MERP character sheet. And I sent it and specified 10 copies from my computer. And then when I got to the machine, I had a brain fart and selected 10 copies of my print job. and I had to try and conceal 100 copies of 100 MERP character sheets as I left the school that day.
It reminds me of printing entire rule books on the office printer. You're standing by the printer. I didn't realize this file was so big. Page 247. Page 248.
And you're there looking outside, going, "Is anybody coming? Is anybody going to notice?"
I would literally go back to my desk and work, and like look over the partition. Is it still going? Yeah. But no, I had a lucky life. I don't think I've ever grown up in a house or lived in a house in my childhood that didn't have graph paper. So from like age 4 on, there was always graph paper because it was either my brother's dad, who was a mathematician and a physicist, so he always had some sort of graph paper of sorts around, and then later on, my stepdad, not my brother's dad. It's complicated. He was a tool and die machinist, and so he would always have graph paper around for plotting out the frames and bodies of parts that they were going to make. So I lived in graph paper heaven, and then there were all my friends' parents were Boeing engineers and everything else. So graph paper was everywhere. That and giant. And those giant pages of the green and white striped plotter paper with the removable bits that you could flip over, and there were just giant pages of white. So
my mother had access to a Xerox machine at her work, which in the mid 80s was a big deal to us. So she would photocopy all the stuff we needed to play the games, character sheets, graph paper, hex graph paper specifically.
We thought we were the funniest gamers known to man in high school. In the town I lived in, the only place that we could get free copies from that we had easy access to was the Christian bookstore, and we'd go there and print out our D&D sheets. We thought we were getting away with a lot, and then we realized later on, as we actually started to look around the store as our copies were running, that the store actually had a fantasy section, even though it was a Christian bookstore. I'm like, Christian fantasy is a thing. Should I read this stuff?
There was a Christian version of D&D.
But,
getting off topic. I'll get off topic on that.
Hey, but I was saving money.
Tell you how much it cost, and then we're back on topic.
Saving money by getting free copies of my character sheets done at the Christian bookstore. So instead of paying for them at the local print shop.
Yes, and we're all of a certain age, and we've all done that. And that I can tell by what people are saying in chat that they've all done that as well. It seemed like it was something that we all attempted in our youth, because our meager allowances wouldn't stretch to buying too much.
Gen X's, we had to get creative.
Oh yes.
Hey, you want to talk about playing D&D for free? There's always my origin story, which is going home and trying to recreate it from memory after playing it the first time. I was bound and determined to rewrite D&D from one 3-hour encounter on a weekend. So,
upon reading the player's handbook of the Beckney set for the first time, I was like, this is nothing like the cartoon.
Yeah, I was so wrong with mine, but my parents played it with me, so.
And that means it worked.
Oh yeah.
I guess when I first started, and I'd go into the local games workshop, which was a proper gaming store in those days, and dice were 10p each. I'd have to be frugal as to how many dice I bought. I'd go in with about 20 pence in my pocket. Used to make do with
and half of them were paid
contrived.
For. No.
And you used to have to make do with doubling dice up for multiple purposes. Half a D8 is a D4. Creative ways of rolling D20s using a D6 and a D10. Someone said recently the original home set didn't come with a proper D20, did it? You had to roll the the D20 that was numbered 1 to 10, and then you'd roll the D6.
Yes,
And if
that's
you rolled
true.
4 or higher on the D6, you'd add 10 to your result.
A friend of mine had it was a weird one. It was like a weird shaped D10. It was like a smaller D20, but it only had the 10
Yes.
numbers on it, and
Yes.
you had to roll it with another die.
The double 10 or whatever they call it.
Yeah. And of course, your D20s could double up as D10s.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm sure we've all saved money by doing that in the past. I think, yeah, my first time I ever attempted to run anything D&D related, I'd got a couple of D6s. That was it. I nicked out of a Monopoly set at home. That's all we had.
A buddy of mine tells me about a guy he used to play with refused to buy a set of dice. So what he would do when he DM'd is he would just write different columns, like 1 to 6, and he would write down probably about 100 different variations of 1 to 6, for instance, and randomly. And then the next one in sequence would be whatever would be rolled if a D6 came up. Same with the D20s and the D12s. So yeah, it would be like, okay, so we're on column 3. It's the third time a D20's been rolled. Oh, you got a natural 20. Okay, you're up next. So 14. You're up next. 9.
That's how they have to play D&D in American prisons.
They don't allow them dice.
Nope, they don't allow them dice because it counts as gambling paraphernalia.
Ha! That's fun.
Depends on the prison, obviously, but you'll actually see there's actually a pretty decent sized movement to try and get gaming into American prisons, or at least there used to be, as a way to
teach cooperation.
Well, to get them something to do, because not everybody in prison is going to want to spend their time, lifting weights or reading the same, copy of whatever for the 80 billionth time. But getting guys together in a group and socializing and stuff. This is in the prisons that back when they were maybe trying to actually have some sort of rehabilitative capacity. But yeah, the big problem they had was no dice.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would have to resort to to like paper chits in a cup, coin tosses, or like you're talking about the random columns. And a lot of that they learned from articles in Dragon, because I remember those articles in Dragon, how to run D&D when you don't have your dice. And I remember using a couple of them when we went camping, because nobody was going to take our dice out camping because they might get lost in the woods. But
and back on topic, Dragon Magazine. How many of you shelled out for Dragon Magazine?
When I could find them, I would. And then I finally got a subscription in my 30s, right before the magazine stopped printing.
Yeah.
I could never afford. It was possible to get a subscription over here in Britain, but you had to pay the postage. And there was no way I could justify that. So I would occasionally buy a copy of White Dwarf if I had enough money in my pocket when I was in Games Workshop.
I bought a sum total of 2 copies of Dragon Magazine when I was a kid. And it was like, I always wanted a subscription to it, but I could never afford it.
No. And we have an Omanal.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very apt stream for you to join in, Omanal.
Omanal's answer to everything is too much.
How much do I spend versus how much should you spend? Those are two very different things.
Well, I opened up with the question to both Sean and Eli about how much do you reckon you've spent in the last 12 months? Do you want to answer that question, Omanal?
Probably anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 would be my guess.
How much of the stuff you've bought have you actually used?
I can't even imagine having that much disposable income to begin with.
Well, you know what? I'm building an entrance to my property on the hope that I can build a house someday, and that's going to eat up into it. But no, how much do I actually use? That's not. I don't think that's really a fair question, because really the point is, and I think we have to look at this much. How much do I use? Probably very little. But how much do I enjoy reading? An awful lot. I read RPG game books like most people read fiction.
Right.
I sit down and Well, I mean, not that I have this, and I'll have to. I just came back from work, so I have to like change. Um, but
Yeah, I
some
was
of
going to say you're looking really haggard.
yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, we're talking about Eli and his paleo mythic stuff, or the or whatever, or
Paleo fantasy stuff. Yeah.
well, I bought the RPG for paleo mythic. Okay, that I forgot what I got a discount on it. So okay, it was what, 30 something bucks or something like that. However, to go along with that, I bought 4 dinosaur books and a book on Pleistocene that have nothing to do with games. But
Yeah, there is that expense. I totally didn't think about all the stuff that I've bought that is para gaming material.
well, they're used for inspiration and ideas.
Yeah.
But to be fair, am I going to say that it was money poorly spent? No, I got a book on a bunch of dinosaurs and other stuff that I loved ever since I was a kid. So,
Yes.
I don't want to bring that up as okay, but that's not an RPG stuff. I back a couple of Kickstarters, to be fair, so those are like 1 to 2 years out for some things. But but I'm a DM. I think that Watsy said that, what is it? Something like 80% of all purchases are made by 20% of the consumer. The consumers, the players, basically.
And that's shifted. It was probably an even greater disparity back in the 80s.
I don't know, because all my friends bought this stuff, so I can't say that. Maybe the module aspect, yeah, okay, but the great thing about being a player is normally all you have to do is buy your basic. You don't even have to buy it, but if you want to, you buy your basic player handbook, whatever that is, or basic core book. I'll just say core book because it varies, and then you buy some dice, and you're kind of done. I think that a lot more people have done the disposable income aspect and have gone through that. I will say this much: Humble Bundle. When you guys were talking, which I was listening to some of that when you guys were talking about the stuff that you order. Campaign cartographer, I think, cost me like $20. I don't know how much it is normally, but it's like, okay, I'll use that. But I've also bought Wonder Draft and Dungeon Draft. Okay, fine. That's a one-time purchase that I bought like 4 or 5 years ago.
I was going to buy campaign cartographer, but the demo version was utterly unstable on my computer.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not going to pay for the full version if I can't get the free download demo to work.
And
it's crashing out every 30 minutes or so.
Yeah.
How do I know? How do I know the full version is going to work?
Well, exactly. Well, for your computer, that's exactly the way you should go with it. And I don't mind as much, but you guys were talking about certain ones. Is okay. I'm interested in playing a game. Okay, I'll get the starter set. All right. Guess what?
Yeah.
I'm the only person buying this, so that's on me. But as a player, oh Willie, you've got dice, you've got cutouts, you've got cards. Oh, okay, you got this. We've got all the little cards here, and then I think that I also bought it with the VTT with Foundry. I know you guys were talking about Foundry a bit. I don't. How do I want to put this? I don't like using. I know some people want to use it. It's not that I mind the map. What I like about Foundry is I can use it. And again, I wish I used it in a game, but this is what I found I could do. Theory crafting. I can use it as a journal to keep track of all my notes and everything else, including monsters and everything else. Players can just roll dice if they want to, but what I like about it is I can allow them access to see things. It's basically like a giant Dungeon Master screen. Oh, here's a handout you see, and I can put that up there. Very similar to what you do on Discord.
You do that on Roll20 as well. Yeah.
If they're not familiar with the rule set, I can give permissions that they can only look at certain things. And so that's really nice for that aspect. So I don't know, as a player, you don't have to spend crap. All you have to do is find a group, and then you're really paying for probably snacks and, wherever to get there. To be fair, if you're not buying snacks, you're being bad to your DM. And I don't have to, and I know when we were playing in person, for the most part, we would bring in, we had full meals. And even the poor kids, I say poor kids, one of them was 17. The other guy, he was working almost a minimum wage job. they still wanted to chip in, and I'm like, look, I'm making almost 6 or 7 times what you are. You don't have to chip in, okay? I'll handle some of the food. And they're like, no, I got to bring stuff in. And man, that makes a huge difference for that. Let's, little tiny things. Bring stuff you want. That's where the expensive D&D. But you know what? That's no different than if you're going to be watching a soccer game at someone's house, or if you're going to be watching a football game or something. However that's going to work out. You should be probably bringing snacks to your friends anyway. Otherwise, they'll stop inviting you.
I'm the one who usually provides snacks.
Well,
I guess that adds to my expense.
Well, yeah, but I do too. But I enjoy entertaining from that aspect. But like I said, I have friends that it was like, well, okay, they would actually stop me and say, well, you brought fajitas last time. What can I bring? I said, well, why don't you just bring, queso, which is not too expensive. Bring queso. It's like $4 or $5. Like, oh, okay, I can do that. I said, bring drinks. All right, I can do that. And I think that's an awesome thing to do. I think that while we talk about, but I heard you talking about subscriptions. No, I want a one-time purchase so it's mine, so I don't feel like I lose it for that. We talk about campaign maps, and I know that, like Sean there, man, how much do they order the stick minis cost? You buy one thing, and then you print them out. So that's what, $5 a sheet or something?
Something like that. Yeah, they're $6 for all the sets except for the most recent, which was 8.
Okay.
But I got the first few for free because they were fulfillment from the Kickstarter from like 10 years ago.
Oh wow! So I mean, it is as expensive as you want it to be, and the other part is, again, if you want to do it, if you have something with a PDF or an iPad, which I'm not going to include for cost for those mechanics, but how much do we? All the free quick starts. The quick starts are free. The free gaming day, you can play dozens of games without ever spending a dime.
Correct.
Uh-oh.
And we have a Saxius joining us as well.
Hello.
Hello.
He got fed up with us going off track too much. He had to come in.
I can wait for a few minutes. You can get us in trouble with Saxius. I see how you are.
I know. I come in, I stay on top, and he's like, I have to appear to make sure you stay there.
So, got to put some rail tracks on this. Just quick one for gaming is cheap. Yeah, yes, it is. It is, in my opinion. Just if you mathematically break it down for how many hours versus how much time you invest into it, you're going to be looking at pennies at the return.
Yes.
We talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to be buying cable is what, $80 to $90 for a big thing of cable. If you're doing D&D, you generally get $3. That's $150. If you're doing some other game system, you're generally going to spend $50 to $70. And I'm using MSRP. I know you can find it cheaper in third places, but that's it. It's like, okay, 1 month of this, and you're going to be playing for years if you enjoy it. And then you're going to add. Then you might do your little additional packages as you want on there. But hell, that's why I know that we were talking with EO Geek about Conan. I was like, just buy these books. The other ones are more for the fan base, but these are all you need. It's just like D&D, like what, 6 core books basically.
With like Conan too. I mean, you could buy the main core books and then just go Wikipedia all the Conan lore you want.
Yes.
Well, no, I meant, but what I meant for the core books is you get the core book, you get the Book of Magic, and you get the Book of Monsters.
Well, no, I know, but you don't need like all the different information on the realms and stuff, because if you're good enough with the system, you could just extrapolate that,
Oh yeah, but that's what I'm trying to say is the other part is I think that we get caught sometimes this mentality. I know I do by buying sometimes the modules. If I really enjoy it, I'll buy the modules. But a lot of times I avoid modules. We said, look, I'll do my own homebrew, or I'll take a setting and then I'll create the stuff. Not that I'll do the homebrew for anything else, but I like the setting. But I'll leave the modules out because the modules are, let's be honest, they're basic railroads in most cases, unless we really kind of love them. And I'm like, okay, I'll get the nostalgic feel for the the OAR books from Goodman Games.
Yeah.
I mean, that takes on. You mentioned Kickstarters. I mean, how many of us here have backed many Kickstarters for gaming purposes. I've backed a couple of Midland Miniatures ones. I backed Reaper Bones 4, 5, and 6. I backed the Goodman Games Dark Tower one that's coming out.
Yes, I backed that one too.
I think that's my limit as far as Kickstarters go, but I can see how they are very much like a drug in terms of getting new stuff.
I bought, and a lot of times I'll wait until I see that they've had one successful Kickstarter or they're a well-established company. Let's see, I bought Exalted. I'm like, okay, those come out about once a year. So I'm like, okay, I'll get this book. We'll see what comes in. And they come in slowly, but that's fine. I have backed the Old School Essentials, which was the best deal because it was 6 months from the time I backed it till the time I got it.
It was super fast. Yeah, it was unbelievably fast.
I wish I'd seen that one. I never saw it when it was happening. That's one I wish I'd seen.
The only reason I saw it is I saw it in Exalted Funeral where you could buy the box set. The box set sold out so quickly that I said, oh man, well, I'm sorry, I was going to buy the individuals. And they went, oh man, I can't even buy the individuals because they're missing books. I'm like, I'm not going to buy an incomplete set of books. And
really?
I said, yeah,
go ahead. Sorry. I was going to say one thing that I totally spaced out, and it's like really worth mentioning, is if you want to get materials, like printed materials, and still be dirt cheap, there's always BSR. BFR, Basic Fantasy Role Playing. Yeah, that they sell all their stuff print copies at cost. I have almost everything they've published, and it cost me under the price of 1.5 ebook.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I was tempted to get them just to have them because they have a bunch of modules, and that's where the interest lies for me, is having the printed modules as options.
Their modules are great too, especially for somebody like you, Sean, who's running like an OSR type.
I blend it all together. Yeah.
Yeah, well, like they've got another Keep. They've got their version of Keep on the Borderlands. It's not exactly like Keep on the Borderlands, but
they've got Monkey Island, which is their Isle of Dread.
Exactly. So their Keep could be the next Keep over.
Yeah.
It's one of those
things. But the thing is like it's dirt cheap and it's printed material and it's a solid game. It's constantly
it's also alive. It's very supported by the community of the Basic Fantasy. Their forums are alive. That's the best way of putting it. They are really alive.
Chris Gonnerman has a good thing going there.
It's a really great thing. I mean, I'm talking. The one guy that I do like 1DM, 1 player with, he's an active member of that community. He posts so many additional races, classes, ideas, and the community just gobbles it up. They go, they play test it, they give them feedback in return, and it's just it's such a positive feedback loop.
They'll produce art for your monster, or figure out how to where they can get art to illustrate your adventure and stuff like that. It's really good.
I know I mentioned a whole bundle of holding. If you aren't sure you want something, man, it is awfully nice to say, you know what, I'm going to buy. I'll use the Cipher system, or for this as an example. I think they had it similar with OSE and Weird Frontiers, DCC, and some of these others. Up to the point that I have multiple copies of the PDF of DCC that I gave away a couple of those. But it was one of these things that you go, okay, I'm going to spend $20. $20 is what, one or two movies, depending on where you go and what you get. And now I have dozens of hours to read. So you're like, oh, okay, I don't have any problems with that. You read it, and you go, okay, I like the system. I don't like the system. I like the ideas. I don't like the mechanics. You can do all of that, and you can toss it out. I'm getting my friend looking at different systems right now, just to say, okay, what do you want to play? Because he's trying to he's soured very much on Hasbro for what's been going on the last couple of months. I think his final straw was kind of the using the Pinkertons to come in. That was he's like, all right, that's enough. But I'm like, well, you're gonna try a Pathfinder. Here, try this. It's easier. Try this for this. And I'm letting him look over it and see what he likes. But no, I'm not as much into it. The other part is there are always sales. Free League generally has a sale around the June, July time frame. You have the
Bundle.
the Black Friday sales. Those are always really good. So if you
I
see
think
it's
one of my problems with a lot of the way things are done nowadays is I really, really don't like paying for digital content.
yes.
I don't feel as though I'm getting anything unless I'm holding something in my hand. I'd much rather spend more on a solid book because I feel I've got something.
No. I do both, but I'm saying for Free League, when you buy Free League, they give you the PDF with the physical copy. So when you buy it for half off, so
I
if
think
it's
yes, step away. But yeah.
if it's 25 but if it's normally a $60 book, I'm buying it for 25 or 30, and I'm getting the PDF. And PDFs have gotten ridiculously expensive, I've noticed.
Oh,
Yeah.
to the point where it's like
That's because PDFs are actually pricing for what you're actually paying for, because the actual printing of a book doesn't actually cost all that much.
which I think that's a fair thing for the market at the very least, because you've got to make your money somehow, and you still put work into the book, so that's going to be covered
I'm just saying,
somehow.
when you're looking at the percentage of the price of what you're paying for a printed book, it's actually a good chunk of that is paying for all of the work it took to get it to print, and the print itself is very low.
No. I'm not.
But I definitely want
that
both.
aspect.
I definitely want both.
I do kind of cringe when they're like the PDF and the print version at more than one or the other.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a perfect example, like I said, for Free League is the Modifius does the same thing. You buy the physical copy, you get a free. You get the PDF with it for the same cost. Okay, for MSRP, that seems pretty fair. I don't have any problems with that. I'm just saying, but when you get the sales, in some cases, the sales are cheaper than the PDF when you get both together. That's what I was trying to mention for that.
That's a marketing thing that some companies are going to be doing and so on. But in terms of like the
I think a lot of the times when they're doing the bundle of holding stuff, though, they've already made their money on that product, so they can afford to just give it away.
Oh yeah, I mean that's when you see things, bag of holding, humble bundle, all of that. That's usually products that's been out for circulation for quite a while, and that's when you're seeing them sort of like re-entering again for a quick boost, you could almost say. But maybe going over to, have you already discussed about where the hobby might not be cheap as a gaming, as a for the hobby, how it can be expensive?
I mean, we did mention them. Probably the most expensive route is if you play face to face with physical terrain and miniatures and all that sort of stuff, and you want to go over the top.
So we talked about escalating costs. Yeah.
Have we brought up the fact that some of us are game hoarders?
Yeah, we did talk about the cost of collecting and all of that too.
That topic's verboten. No, we don't talk about that. No.
Oh, we do not talk about.
We haven't talked about pro DMs yet, though.
Oh yes, I have it for I have saved the topic of paying to play and pro DMs to the end because it's potentially the most. Awesome. Now we know you're a hoarder. We know you're a hoarder.
Well, these are the ones. I think these are the ones that I bought, and then I happened to win 18 free sets of, from Goodman Games for even more dice. But, at this point, it's the first time in my life I ever said I have enough dice. And go, why would I ever want to buy any more? No. When you talk about game hoarding, I mean, I had my wall, and then my father put stuff up, which I'm not sure in what condition it is because it was in Florida, but he put them all up in an attic. So we'll see what's left over from 2 hurricanes. But the other part is we have all these old games. You don't have to spend anything if you can get people to play the games that you played when you were a kid, if you still have them.
Yeah, I'm kind of like kicking myself sometimes now. I'm like, why did I buy later editions of games? I mean, because what I realized, like with 5th edition games, for example, well, this is not to bag on 5th edition as a system because I do enjoy playing it. I realize that the games that I play with it end up feeling very much the same as the games I've played with AD&D anyways. Like not necessarily in power level or anything like that, but just the amount of fun I have hasn't changed. So I'm like, did I really need to keep upgrading?
I mean,
Well, so just for Kabuki Kid, they also gave me dice bags. So.
I know that I'm currently sitting and just looking at a couple of systems where I know I would love to run them, but I just don't either have the time or I've not run those games often enough. I've actually got, let me see, I've got maybe like 3 or 4 game systems, not systems, but games on my current shelf that I have not actually run. And everything else has been touched or used at some point, but I would argue at the very least my collection / hoarding capabilities have certainly caused my hobby to be much more expensive. So much so that at one point I actually went through and said, right, how much have I actually spent on the hobby and do I really need this? And by the time I was done calculating the approximate value, I was sitting and going like, okay, this is a sizable portion. This is actually to the point of where I was thinking, I need to stop for a year. And that put me down the path of just not buying, of holding back on buying books that I don't actually need for something. So,
Yeah.
So I mean, okay, so we can talk about some of these just for core books. I bought these from Free League last year for half off.
yeah.
And like, okay, Mutant Year Zero and the Third Horizon. Then I probably bought some other stuff, and some of it is to get you to buy other things. I'm still trying to read Coriolis, which I kind of like, but I need to read more. I was trying to read it from front to back. I haven't really touched Mutant Year Zero that much. I mean, I like looking at the mechanics. But yeah, but I'll say this much is there's great games if you're willing to go outside of your normal, and even I'm not sure if you guys saw for the Christmas sales for 5e, many of the books are being sold anywhere from $15 to $22.
Yeah.
And so you could get the core set for less than $60 for all 3. And we're saying everything's expensive. As long as you're not trying to go for the newest, flashiest thing, man, you can do it. But that said, now it's cheap. Guess what? I'll buy twice as much. Hey, look, honey, I saved $700 by buying it at 50% off.
Next question I'm going to put. So Sack I've asked everybody else. You haven't had this question yet. How much do you reckon you've spent in the last 12 months?
Oh, 12 months. Okay, that's a lot easier. Fuck.
All of our response the same. Yeah.
Oh, okay. 12 months. So that would be April last year. Oh, okay.
While he does the calculation, allow me to share something here. Hold on a sec. I'll figure this sharing.
Where have it again?
Anyway,
one other question for everyone to think on is, what's the most you've ever spent in a...
All right, I've spent £130 in the last 12 months.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah, so that's all right. That's by specifically. Oh, that's jealous.
You know what? That looks like a that looks like you're just a piker trying to pretend that you're a hoarder. So
that's within immediate access. That's my gaming nook. So whenever I play, that's what's right behind me.
I know. I'm just teasing you.
The rest is in a storage closet.
Yeah,
it looks far too tidy.
Mine is in a proper gamer shambles. Thank you.
I mean,
even though I have shelves, there's just tables where it spills out onto, and
I mean,
it's even on the floor behind me.
I know. I've got those books, and then I started shifting books around so to go into the bathroom for more stuff that I'm not playing.
I have to come out and say and respond to what Gene has just said,
which I've just shared. Yes,
I'm sure there is.
Yes. No, I have intentionally not I did it once. It terrified me so much that I don't want to know how much I've spent, because that might put me off the hobby.
Well, you know what? It wouldn't put you off the hobby if you're saying, "Honey, I only spent $130 last year on it."
I have more or less. I have told my wife more or less what the value of the books are, so that she knows that if it needs to be done, we do have a return of investment, so to speak. Not that I ever think of going down that route, but
No,
to answer
quite.
the other question, to answer
If
the
I
other
die
question,
and you need money to live,
well, yeah, exactly, more or less. But like, it's the whole case of like, please go down the proper routes and the proper channels of doing this. Don't just go down to like Salvation Army and go like, I've got all these books. I was like,
Yeah.
no, please don't do that.
yard sale.
Oh, I will
Well,
come. Necromancy will return. I'll come out of my grave for that. To answer the question of how much I've spent in a single purchase, that has got to be almost between £750 to maybe £900 in a single purchase.
What did you buy?
That blows mine out of the water.
I bought
My brain's just doing the currency conversion, and I'm like, no.
7, 8, 9, 10,
That's what you
11,
want.
12, 13,
Well, remember they also pay more.
about 15 box
Yeah.
sets in one go. 15 complete AD&D second edition box sets. The Ravenloft box sets. The Spelljammer.
All the campaign stuff.
all of them. The Night Below, Birthright, Mental Barrison, 2 of them, as a matter of fact.
Oh wow!
Dragon Mountain, Forgotten Realms, Greyhawk, Undermountain. Again, I even got one of the first edition Ravenloft book box sets crammed into that for that price. Mind you, that was eBay, and I got into a bidding war with me staying up till like 2 a.m. to snipe the final bid in and get it, because at that point I had already sort of committed myself. I
think I had that on my watch list.
Oh
yeah.
no, you stole it from Ye Olde Geek.
No, I wouldn't have been bidding on that. No.
So I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say new. I'm not going to say eBay, and I'm not going to include a Kickstarter, which really wasn't for. It was more for board games than anything else. But I'm not going to include that. I'm going to say that Monty Cook had a sale.
Tallus?
Oh well, Tolus has been up there. No, I got the new Monera books. Plus, I mean, I spent like $700 on it, and $700 or $800, and I mean. I was like, okay, I'll get this. Oh, I'll get this. And I want the Predation one, and I want this. And I laid it out somewhere. I have to find the picture of where I did it. Maybe I'll give that to John there, laying out all of the books I got and that was about a couple years ago. But there's a certain point where you get them, and you say, okay, I've got it, and now I'm kind of at the point of I'm not sure in how much the books are. What am I going to say? I'm not seeing that much that is exciting for games as much now. It takes a lot of books to add up to that, especially when they're half off. I mean, when you start doing that, then it really gets up there. But let me see if I can find it.
I'll say now, my biggest ever single outlay. I was looking at pricing up MERP books, Middle Earth books, and I'd seen how much they were starting to go for. I was seeing that individual modules, and we're talking 6, 7, but actually we're talking about 8 years ago, and individual modules were hitting about £20 each then. And I saw somebody starting to list a big bulk lot of them, one by one, and he'd clearly got them all ready to go, and 5 minutes later another one would appear from the same guy. And then 10 minutes later, another one would appear from the same guy. And some of them were getting bids straight away. So I pinged him a message and said, how much more have you got that you've not yet listed or it hasn't been bidded on yet? And he sent me a list back and says, what do you want for it all? Will you take $350? And he said, okay, yeah, as long as you come and pick it up. Now, there were a few things that had already received bids on eBay, but the haul I got of 30 to 35 books for 350 quid, of which the ones in the worst condition were going for £20 on eBay. And there's one or two of them in there that have gone in recent years for over £200 on eBay.
Yep.
I know I absolutely nailed that deal.
Yes, you did.
Absolutely nailed that deal.
I mean,
I've
I
got
know
things, for example, the second edition version of the Kinstrife in absolute mint condition. That thing is like rocking horse shit. I've got the 400-page Arnor book. That is in a used condition, a solid used condition. That is worth. I've seen that go for. I've seen it listed for over 300. I've seen it auctioned to about 150.
That's what kind of gets me about this. Like, I know Eli was talking about this, where you can sometimes tell that they're trying to push these things up, and they're getting fake bids to push the price up to a certain level. And I'm going. I mean, I've got some good deals on when I bought some Warhammer stuff and things like that. But I just sent you a picture, John, on the stream invites of what I did, and a lot of those are cards. You got like having all of the little special cards to do it. Oh yeah, that's What I feel sad about this because they lost the license.
What condition would you class that as?
I would consider that
there's
about
a
as good
tiny
as
scuff there. Tiny scuff there. That is it.
That's me is the same condition that it would be if I probably bought it off the when it was new. That kind of thing.
Yeah, it's near mint. Near mint.
And I will say this much though: is I want my books to be used. I know that sounds weird, but I have ever since Unearthed Arcana came out, and we're talking when was that? 1984, 85?
85, yeah.
And I could see the poor binding that they had in it. All of my books have never been. I never opened my books past 90 degrees. That's 45 one way, and I'm like, okay, this is how you have to hold it. So yeah. Anyway, I just sent you a picture in the Discord if you guys want to see what I said where I spent all that money on. But
I'll have. I don't keep Discord open on this computer.
Okay.
Once my new computer is properly up and running, I'll be able to do that sort of thing. But
that's fine.
That is a nice haul. That's a nice haul right there. Do you want me to share it?
Sure. Yeah.
Go on.
If you want to.
All right.
Let's see if you can do it.
Yeah, it's just I need to get up to the right page.
Yeah.
So there we go.
And a lot of it was the cards, probably where I got it from. But that was a couple years ago, and then I think last year they just said 50% off and everything. I said, well, that works out well, so I did that. But I will say as much. Money Cook does a really good job for PDF print. They're good quality books. I like them. I'm not sure I really like the cipher system, but the playnet is the Dungeon Master's guide basically, or the is basically the rules, and I do like that thing. But
very pretty.
Yeah. If you want to roll dice, that's great. I like that, but it has all the rules on the edge for players don't really have to open the book for most of their stuff. And there you go. Now, would have I bought all that stuff if it hadn't been on sale? No, there's several books I didn't. If they just did 50% off, I would have bought a bit differently. But I fleshed out just about everything this year, so it's not quite my thing, for Cypher, but I do like the ideas. They do really good for whenever we talk about these Dungeon Master things. He takes time, and man, their PDFs are if you buy a PDF from a Monty Cook, for whatever Monty Cook does, they are hyperlinked internally. They do everything you ever. I mean, they're the gold standard of PDFs, and I agree with Eli on this about where you're putting your money. You're putting your money in all that aspect in your art and everything else initially, but that's your upfront cost. Once your upfront cost is there, then it's in the printing is where it starts getting the back end cost. But
if I may step in,
sure.
I'm just gonna take us in a different direction.
Yeah.
Because I believe John wanted to ask us what our thoughts and insights were of paid DMs.
I was about to bring us on to that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
So,
sure.
Yeah. Real
Right.
quick, because I had to step away. I've not spent anywhere near as much as you guys. Maybe I think the largest expenditure was $450 on Dwarven Forge at one time, and it was only because it was almost $700 worth of Dwarven
Yeah.
Forge. And other than that, maybe I didn't spend that. That was bought for me. So, but yeah, so yeah, that was it. That's
Well, I mean, it adds up over time, and I've really cut back on what I've been buying. Recently.
Yeah.
I still spend like $400 or $500 a year, but
I think
that's a big down from. Well, to be fair, I came back from Iraq, and I was like, I have got money, I've got things I want to read. I've been stuck in a war, well, not quite a war zone, but technically a war zone, but it was pretty quiet. But I was like, okay, I let me flip to these books, and that's where I started finding Free League and all this other stuff, and I just grabbed it because they were all new. It was all new, nice and shiny, and I've read it, and now I'm going, okay. Everything else, there's nothing spectacular. I'll just hold off until I see something that grabs my interest.
Right. And back to John.
Right. Yes, this is to turn the stream towards the way the hobby is heading in the near future and the way it has been heading in the last few years. And that is the quite thorny topic of paid DMing, pay to play, and what they're saying about the brand being under monetized and the way in which we foresee their approach in terms of buying stuff for virtual tabletops and all that sort of stuff. It's been boiling and brewing for the last few years, and there's been a few announcements earlier this year that have really sort of brought it to the fore. But have any of you ever paid to play a game? And I'll answer that to start with. For me, I've been to conventions where you pay £4 or £5 to join in a 4-hour session, but you expect that at a convention. And one of my groups, we were meeting up on a Saturday. Oh, you're going to have to head off, are you, Elfbait?
Yeah, unfortunately, my time is at an end. So
your time is at an end.
Yep. I have a work meeting I have to go to. But
and this is something that you know something about as well.
Yeah, I mean, in real quick, I can say my experience as far as I was a paid DM for about 6 months, and it was good. It was I was working with a local shop. Nobody minded. Ended up with actually a regular group of players who were coming in every week and paying. Never been to a convention where I've had to pay for a game. All the conventions I went to were just pay to get in and then sign up for a slot. And I've never paid to play in a game with somebody other than maybe, bribing the DM. But
how much were you paid, if it's not too rude a question?
Not a lot, actually. I was doing it for basically hobby money, and so I was making roughly, depending on how many people were at the table, about $40 to $60 into my pocket a night. It's about $10 a person. About $10 a person.
But you're running a game for what, 3 or 4 hours, and you've got to do the preparation beforehand. So it's
3 hour there were about 3-hour sessions, and that's why I didn't feel better. That's why I didn't charge more. It's because I really couldn't put the time in. But it was weekly, and it was a good gig. I'd leave work, I'd go to the shop, show up early, go to the Chinese buffet next door, do my prep, a little bit of prep time while emptying a couple of plates, come over and play. And we got to be a really tight group of players. I mean, one of my players started giving me stuff like, hey, I've got a second copy of this book. Hey, sounds cool. I still keep in touch with them on Facebook. One guy was an old grognard who was from the Air Force, who was wanting to play AD&D, but he was going to play whatever he could. And his big darling was Palladium. But no, it was a good gig. It did bring in business for the shop. And and it added a sense of community to the shop too, because that's the other thing is the benefit of having to pay somebody to run a game there gets a game there, and it creates the air. It creates the buzz of a game, and so it's like buying starters for your garden, right? You could plant your garden from seed, but if you buy starters, it's likely to propagate a little bit better than if from seed. And so that's kind of how it went with the store. The store is my friend from way back when we used to be roommates. But all told, I made a couple of grand doing that job over time.
You spent it all at the Chinese buffet by the sound of things.
No, I spent most of it at the shop. Most of it went right back into the store. But I did go. I also have to factor in that while I was working that job, I also got handed free copies of stuff a lot of time by the store owner, and I got an employee discount for the store, so I got stuff at cost plus 10. So,
all right.
But that's all I can really say. I gotta go, guys. Later.
All right.
See you later.
See you soon.
See ya. To that.
Later.
All right. I don't know if it counts as paying to play so much as I had a group. We used to meet on a Saturday afternoon, and we were quite scattered. So we found a shop in a town that was central, that had got space, and we rented a room there for 3 hours. And the DM got it for free, and the players divided the room cost up.
Yeah, that's not the same though.
It's still not the same. No.
The DM is charging, a wage. They are earning money from that, and
it's not. I still see it as me paying to play, but I wasn't a paid DM.
That's an operating cost. Yeah.
No, that's just covering expenses from everything. That's the same as my real life group. We all travel in, we meet at a specific pub, we then all cover our own expenses because the pub serves food, so we all pitch in for that. We all order some food in for there, we get our drinks and all of that, and then if someone's driving other people in, then those people, they share costs and all so on. None of this is for profits. I think that's the key thing to differentiate it, that you can, as a group, you can all pitch in and go like, okay, we need to pay X amount for either resources, space, or availability of something to just be able to facilitate it. As Sean said, that's facilitation more than anything. And then you've got DMs where it will be, I will charge each attending player a fixed fee, or I will charge a fixed fee per session. And then from there, then we will take it from there.
I do have something to say on the subject, but first I want to ask Saxius, is Ace-Eric visiting you there? Upper left?
Upper right hand. Your upper right.
Oh, that I've always had it up there.
No.
Like no one's really just caught on. I've got a copy of that one. That's a servitor skull, and I've got a devil skull on the other side.
Yes, minions. We know where his allegiances lie.
Hey, I'm lawful evil. I don't put myself as being the leader, but I'm a very good general.
I'm gonna say something. As we're talking about this, the real question is, why are you playing? And if you're playing for a bunch of friends, I'm going to help my friends defray cost. Now, that doesn't mean I'm paying them. It's for them, it's like nonprofit. If you are going to be playing, if you're going to be paying for random strangers to do this, and to be fair, even when I look at it, they're charging, we're not talking about some of the stuff where people are talking about an extravagant amount. They're talking $10 per session. For $10 per session, if there are 8 players, that guy's only making $80 for 4 hours of his time. That's not a lot when you start looking at all the things that are expected. And
costs.
I mean, so I don't feel so bad for that. It's just, if I'm playing and John says, hey, look, man, I need, I'm going to start trying to use Foundry or Roll20. Can you guys throw in like $5 a month or something? You're defraying this cost. I'm like, cool, we'll do that. If I'm going over to someone's house and I'm going to be paying, like I've heard some people, $100 to $200 a session. Okay, I expect there to be food. I expect you. I mean, my expectation to be much higher for this, but I'm also not going to do that because I'm a cheap bastard. So there's that aspect. So I don't feel anything wrong with it. If you're going to be putting in your time in hours, and you're very good at it, I have no problems doing that. The problem that I have with it is it's both a commitment for certain things. To me, it's just I don't think I could do that if I was going to play in. How do I want to put this? If I was going to play in Gary Gygax's West's Marches, and he said, "Hey, look, you come in every night, you pay $20 or something. You can play whatever you want. You come in, you drop out. We'll keep okay, fine. I don't mind that too much, but I think that it's this. Some people just get so mad about it. I'm playing with a stranger. I expect you now to play by certain rules. I expect you to do this. I expect to be entertained, and I'm going to do it once or twice. But that to me is very much a convention. But I play to play with friends. I come to play with interesting people. I'm not trying to get the Matt Mercer effect when I come in. And if I'm going to be taking a lot, I do expect that.
I think that part of the problem is the level of expectation. It shifts the whole pay-to-play idea, in my opinion, where you've got a professional DM, is it's partly responsible for the shift in group expectations. I've seen people say, without any hint of irony, that DMs are there to provide a service for players, and that's probably due to their experience of paying a DM.
And in the case of those who paid for the service, they would be right.
Yeah, exactly. But it doesn't ring true for home games where everyone is there to have fun. And I think from a personal point of view, I'm quite particular in what I'll run, and I'm quite particular in how I'll run it. And if I have to compromise on the way I run things, and shift to a way in which I might not enjoy, it'll have a detrimental impact on the game.
I agree.
And I can't fake it, and I can't fake that.
Well, I'm not on Twitter anymore, thankfully, but I have had this discussion with a number of people who are paid DMs, and I often brought up the whole discussion of, if you have customers who say that they want certain things out of it, what you as a DM would have to bend it. Many of them are saying, responding back to me with that, they aren't bending anything. They are providing a service in terms of their skills, their experience, and their insights as a DM, which includes the fact that they know what they are good at and what they're not good at. And before they will be taking on some of these clients, they will, of course, check in with, what are the expectations, what are they looking for, these are the sort of campaigns, this is how the DM is, this is what their style is. Is this something that they're now interested in? Surprisingly, this sounds a lot more like a session 0, where they sit down with the clients and go, well, here's what I'm like as a DM. Here are the wider things. Here's the list of things that I do. Here's the things that I prefer to do. Here's what I'm really good at. Here's what I can provide to you if you decide to hire me. What is this something that is catching your interest? And from there, most clients will often go, well, yeah, I like what you've presented here. I'll go for that. Mm-hmm. And then it's just down for, what's the pay range and so forth, and that's going to be different from group to group, whether they want to pay that much or what have you. But I think the general fear of a DM has to give up with what they are like as a DM style, that's not really a valid thing anymore. Most of the paid DMs, unless they are just broke and desperate and are willing to just sell their or do whatever it is.
I think that's an individual thing. You're absolutely. Yeah. You might say, "This is how I run the games. This is the game you'll be getting with me. I am not catering to your needs." Or the paid DM might do the opposite. Might say, "Okay, what kind of game do you want?" And I will try to mold it to that. That's I think individual.
I think it depends on how the DM gets the gig, and if it's a case of a shop saying, will you come in and run some 5th edition? It's going to be very different to self-marketing and putting yourself out there as a DM who runs a game in a certain way. There will be certain expectations for people coming into a shop to play a game. They're expecting it to be rules as written.
Exactly, and you would agree to that going into that shop, saying, "Okay, I'm going to run the game the way they expect, Adventurers League, compatible, and make sure because you're trying to essentially trying to sell the product for the shop, and that'd be fair." Oh, we lost Oma now. My experience with paid DMs, here in Toronto, there was a guy who started about 5 years ago. He launched himself as a DM for hire. It was he got in at just the right time. Like he put out this ad, decided he was going to try to do it, and then after 2 weeks of nothing, figure, oh, that was a dumb idea, and then got some calls. And then people were hiring him, and then suddenly the CBC, that's the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, they were doing a research piece on Dungeons and Dragons, and they called him up, and so he got this free advertising because the CBC did this whole piece on him, and suddenly his phone was ringing off the hook. So some friends of mine and I, this was our first experience with 5th edition as well. We decided to hire him, A, to learn 5th edition or see what 5th edition was like, and B, to see what a paid DM brings to the table. Now he charged $5 Canadian per hour per player. So we booked him for 5 hours, so $25 a piece. And there were five of us. There were 6, one guy backed out. And, personally, I was unimpressed. I was very surprised at how little he brought to the table. But it was interesting because I did have a conversation with him. He was telling me that for him, his biggest clients are corporate types. These are guys who grew up playing the game, but now they're making gobs of money. They work 60 to 70-hour weeks. They don't have time to prep the game themselves, but they got extra cash. So they're happy to pay him a premium to do all the work for him and play their weekly game. So that's also an interesting aspect of that. It's like, it's not just laziness or, I can always find other players. It's, I don't have the time. So here, I'll just hire somebody to do the work for me.
It's fair
basically
enough,
providing a game for people who are time poor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fair enough as well.
Sorry, let me finish. The concept of the hired DM, I'm indifferent to. It's just another service. So I am surprised at a lot of hate that it gets from people. You'll get people screaming. It's like, why would I ever pay for something? Well, no, you wouldn't, because you have a group. You don't need to, but there are some people who legitimately that is their only route. So what I would want is a a certification level to guarantee you are of quality.
Well, I you know what though, and I want to put.
I say that tongue in cheek, though.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't believe in certification because, and I say this as a professional engineer.
It's subjective. Yeah.
I don't. Well, yeah. The other part is that you can find out pretty quick if this is a game you want to play or not. I think part of it, from my standpoint, is how do I want to put this? Is if I'm going to be paying, we're not just looking at the DM. Everyone looks at the DM. What kind of players are you attracting? And it's one thing to say if you have a bunch of professionals that have disposable income that say, okay, this is what we want, this is what we're looking for, that's fine. It's quite another when you have what I want to call the trust fund babies who are pain in the butts, but they're the ones funding things. I use that, but the other part is while we're talking about this, and this doesn't mean for prostitution, but I assume we have all had this, where so-and-so's girlfriend comes in, the DM's girlfriend or whatever, decides to play, and she gets all the advantages because, he's getting sex instead of, anything else. And we're like, really? It doesn't make the game that much fun. And that's the problem that I would have with it is if there's one person that is, well, I'm spending this much money, I'm going to dominate the game. And you're going, okay, now you're not sharing. It takes a maturity level. And I'm afraid in certain cases that when people get money without the maturity level, this can make it a really horrible thing. That said, at the end of the day,
caveat emptor,
I can go my own way, but if you can make money off of it, more power to you. Because I know as a kid that would be my dream job. You mean I get to play D&D and I get paid?
Yeah.
But
you got to be good at it. You got to know what you're doing, and you do need to know how to manage people.
Yes.
Well, that's also what we had like in the other, tips for DMing, a big part of it is that when you are the DM, there's a social contract. There's an expectation of you being able to sort of, be a group leader in a sense. You've got to be able to sort of manage that group, even though it's going to be like herding cats. You've got to have, that's a skill that you're going to have to, have.
I'm going to bring up the other part is, and this maybe is my concern about paying for DMing, is because you're paying for it, there's less of a social contract of showing up every time. Whereas when you're going to play with a group, I mean, when you're a bunch of friends, you're showing up because they're a bunch of friends. If you go in there for a game and say, I expect this from you, that's fine. It's very different if you're paying. If you're paying, then it's like, look, I can drop in or out whenever I want because I'm the customer.
If you're paying, you're likely going to show up, especially if there's a no refund after a threshold of time.
Yeah, but I mean, but if I'm coming in, I'm like, okay, well, I'm saying per session. We're not saying,
but there's a literal buy-in investment. I think that's where we're leaning towards. Like there's got to be like a down payment for, or at least this is at least how I see it. Sure. I would expect it to be done. It's like you pay before you play.
Yeah.
Because if the DM flakes out of that, then and they don't do any refunds, I mean, they're gonna have their name and everything smeared all over the internet, and then that's the career that's gonna go bye for that.
Well, I mean, I think it's different if you're going to say, hey, look, I require $50 up front, or I'm going to just use this as an example. And that will get you 4 sessions. Then that's going to include 1 month of 4 sessions. If you do that, that's very different than saying $10 per session or whatever it is. Because if you do it per session, then the person doesn't feel obligated to come in or, come in. They feel like they can come and go anytime that they want because of that.
Well, they can. They're not getting a refund. They pay for the sessions. The session happens on a certain time. You're there or you're not.
Yeah. Yes. The same when I had my driving lessons. I had paid for a certain day, a certain time to show up. If I didn't show up, then I was going to lose my money. But that was just how that was just how those businesses work, and I'd expect the same for paid DMing.
Yeah.
But maybe taking a side step over to the other points. I hold 2 simultaneous views when it comes to paid DMing. The first one being that everyone is entitled to make money, however they can. It's going to be a competitive market. I mean, it's D&D. It's going to be you, a paid DM, versus the guy who goes, I just want to run a game. I'm not going to be good at it, but it's going to be free. Most people are going to flock to the free one, but it's probably going to be whatever. And you having skills, you're going to have to advertise and compete with everyone else. That's fine, but you know what you're going to be stepping into. There's nothing, nothing's going to be given to you. You're going to have to make a name for yourself. You're allowed to do that. I don't like the concept of paying a DM because to me it goes against the spirit of the game. Now that's a personal philosophy of mine, and I don't believe that I hold any position to enforce that view onto others. So I just enforce it onto myself. Because I have been with groups where the group has turned around and said, we want to pay you for the effort that you put into the game. And I always tell them, no, I don't believe in that.
Well, sexiest, what you do is say, you pay me in beer and alcohol and cakes. And believe it or not,
that's a bribery, but I believe in sacrifices.
But I mean, like, I used to do this when I go over to my friend's house, as I'd bring in a 12-pack of Coke, or I expected everyone to drink from the Coke, but I bought it for my own benefit as much as anything else.
Right.
It's one of these things like, hey man, I bought in, but it's just a courtesy thing. It's the same thing if all of a sudden you got like, bring in a cake. Okay. Cake has to be big enough to feed everyone, but you're doing that. And that's what I mean by some of these things is that's the way that to me the people should, but that's also friendship overall.
Friends. That's your immediate circles. Like once you expand into paying, like if I were to expand into hire out for DM, I have no designs to do so, but if I did, I wouldn't turn around and then charge my private groups. Oh, by the way, I'm professional. Everybody pony up. I would never do that. The people who hire me would have been people who sought me out and understand what I have to offer. And whatever rate. Now I can tell you that, dealing with customers, I would never want to do that because there's too many crazies out there. But the that resolve will lessen the higher the offer comes. Because some wacky billionaire comes along and says, "Yeah, we'll pay you $1,000 a session." I sold. Where do I go?
Well, and you know what? For a billionaire, that's like buying a cup of coffee.
Yeah,
There's certain times that I think that's sometimes what it comes into. But that if you can do that, that's great. I don't have any problems with people doing stuff like that. I think for myself though, is if someone actually offered me money and said, "Hey man, we're doing this, we're going to offer you some money." My view has always been, you pay me in food. It could be something simple. It's like, okay, you know what? Bring a cheesecake next time. Bring this, bring that. That's how I'd rather get, even if it's the same amount.
I would worry. I worry that as soon as money becomes involved, it would change the atmosphere of the table. It would change the atmosphere of the game, and I'm not sure I'd like that.
It depends on how. Yes, it can, but also the question really falls down to the individual. Like, how prevalent is that to your mind at all times? Because if you can sit down and yes, the first 1 or 2 sessions might be the whole thing of like, it's going to be like the normal games. You're still going to get to know you, but once you get into that routine, I suspect that it's going to be no different. It'll be a quick PayPal, whatever payment done, and you'll probably do that 1-2 weeks ahead of time. You show up, you would have forgotten that you've done that payment, and now it's like it's a group thing. It's now the game itself. The question really boils down to, to me at least, how much are you going to be thinking about that while you are gaming?
I'm going to bring up one other thing though, is if you're a paid DM, and this is one of the things I think that people forget about, is it's almost like going for being a music teacher in certain cases, except that you're doing it with multiple people. I still expect you to do stuff outside for your customers when you come to my game that you're ready to go. That's some of the things I think that are coming into it is, okay, you're going to do this, but as a client, don't waste my time and the other people's time. Otherwise, I'll kick you out. But we're also assuming that you have the option of throwing people out. I don't know if that's exactly true for it. It's one thing of, I'm just listening to what, Gygax or even Kevin Simbita was talking about it, where they would have 20 people at a time trying to run games. And then you can go over and you said, you know what? You come in, you pay your money, you're good. If you don't, you're out, and the next person comes in right behind you. And that's a very different aspect of either you're ready to play, and you're ready to put your money down, or you have to wait, until next week. I think that's one thing. It's something very different where you're doing what I want to call it, almost like a personal trainer aspect of, you're okay. I'll come out to your house. We'll do this. I'll do that. I think that's where I think that would cause a big difference.
That would boil down to demand too. Yeah. Like, okay, so you've got a paid DM who's got a high reputation for being quality, and he's got a waiting list of players. The players on his current game are probably going to be more well behaved because they won't lose their spot. They get kicked out. They know they're being replaced. Them leaving is not a threat.
Yeah.
Supply and demand. I mean, really, what we're discussing at this stage is just basically economics and business. And I think we're all more or less in agreement. Everyone can. There's no reason why you can't go out and make money from this. I mean, pay your taxes. If you're going to be a paid DM, just do the best that you can. Pay what the market is fair for you. It's going to be different group to group. Not everyone's going to want to pay that amount. And end of the day, it's your decision. End of the day, we might not like it.
My reservations aren't financial or like monetary. My reservations are, how would it sour the game for me if I'm now making it a business that removes the hobby?
I'm going to bring up a little bit different, which I think was what Eli was talking about, is if you pay to come in to play, you're paying the owner, and then the owner is paying the DM. So he's providing the space, he's providing the miniatures and everything else. You get the whole ambiance for that. And everyone looks at it as, well, I'm paying the DM. Well, that's great, but in some cases, what you're really doing is, to me, it's no different than, hey, look, on Saturday nights, we're going to be having D&D games. You pay your $20 to come in. I have 2 DMs ready to go, and you go from there. And okay, the DMs aren't getting paid that directly. They're getting paid from the store owner. But I think does that really change the equation?
I see where you're coming from, because you're looking at it from the point of view that it's the business entity, whereas I think most of us here were talking about the freelance DM that was doing it. But yes, if it is going to be like it's a well, in that case, then I would by definition have paid a DM, because we had a youth club in Denmark where kids would go there and the parents paid the youth club for the kids having a place to go after school. By definition, we had a D&D group, we had a LARP group. I would have been paying for the D&D games there. Not that I really registered in my head, and no money was exchanged directly from me. It was my parents' money. But technically that was paid for. That never really impacted anything on that end. But that was because we paid for the service of the general entertainment for the kids. But it is.
My biggest hang up to even starting to consider charging for a game ever, I think, is the fact that I treat gaming, even when I'm DMing, as a chance to relax, to chill out, have a laid back game, and it doesn't matter if we stop and chat and fool around for 5-10 minutes, have a laugh and a joke, and then go back to the game and whatever. And I would feel self-conscious about doing all that sort of stuff if my players were paying, and it would detract from the enjoyment of the game for me.
I agree with you. To me, it's like cooking. If I cook, it's because I enjoy cooking. I cook. Let's go for this. But if I had to get paid for that, oh my God, then I'm stressing out about it. And I said, I enjoy cooking. If I had to cook for other people and got paid for it, I wouldn't enjoy cooking. It wouldn't be any fun, and I'd never want to do it. And those are two different aspects. It's, one is kind of a labor of love, and the other one is, well, I'm trying to put food on the table, and if it doesn't turn out right, then I agree with you. It changes my aspect as a person on the people I'm interacting with more than anything else.
I mean, the main reason I set up the drop-in game fortnightly on Saturdays is I just want it to be a relaxed game where people can drop in, drop out, to fit their schedule, not feel beholden to stay for the whole session or what have you, and just pop in as and when they're free. For example, No Saurian joined us towards the end of last session, and we had a little break while we just ran No Saurian through the basics. If that had been an organized session, you couldn't do that sort of thing. We just had the flexibility, and we just had fun. We relaxed. Brian, I haven't seen him in it tonight. Wib Stobin, Brian James in the chat. He'd stayed up the entire night beforehand, and he was trying to decide whether to go to bed or not.
He fell asleep mid-session, at one point.
Oh, yeah.
But it was about 10 a.m. his time, and he'd been plying himself with coffee, and we realized he'd been silent for about an hour, and he was on push to talk. So we couldn't tell whether he was awake or asleep. And he suddenly woke up, and they were in the middle of a big fight with a load of zombies, and he'd had a little power nap because he'd been awake all night. But it was just laid back. It was just a bit of fun.
I'm going to say this much, Sean, is your videos on the completely contrived entrance really just it opens up so much, because it's some of those things like, well, I got to do this, I got to make sure it's in there. Like, nope, completely contrived entrance. Everyone knows it's a completely contrived entrance. It's fun. Just run with it. And everyone's like,
John made use of that on Saturday.
Yeah. And that's what. But that makes it so much, like you said, is there's no stress. It's the player or the DM. Like, okay, you know what? I've got to run stuff. I don't have to make these extra. I'm not trying to knock it, but there were times, when we were doing the Call of Cthulhu, I said, okay, I better make sure I would wake up at like 4 a.m. and I get tired around 8. And I said, okay, I've got to make sure that I'm up for this game, between 8 and noon, which is fine. But, I like to make a commitment for that. If I'm going to say I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there. And, unless there's something really that comes up where I can't, then that's different. But but you're right. Is at that point, the completely contrived entrance, it makes me just want to go, okay, John, I want you to prove this character before I come in. But you know what? I'm gonna jump in on the game at some point and say, okay, if this character is acceptable, I'll run with it. If he's not acceptable, let me know and I'll create another one. And the great thing with OSC is it takes 3 to 5 minutes to do it. It takes longer to write down your stats than to actually roll them up.
Yeah. I used to totally be very, very much we've got to completely justify a new character coming in. It's got to be perfect, it's got to be right, it's got to make sense, it's got to be organic. And and the players are on board too. Like a guy would be sitting there for half an hour to 40 minutes waiting for that opportune, and then I'm like, what am I doing? We're here to play a game. He's not going to sit and do nothing, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I started doing that.
I'm going to bring up one other thing. Is because that's one of the reasons I hate to kill off characters, because they are my friends. I don't want them going off and sitting there twiddling their thumbs. And some people can do that. Like, I'll just read a book and just listen in the background. That's fine. But like, no, if I'm bringing in a group of 4 to 5 people, and we're all together. If I kill off someone, then you're just going to be hanging around doing nothing for 40 or 50 minutes. I said that kind of sucks for me. I know we all talk about health. Well, okay, and I'll do this. But the way with your complete contrived entrance, it's like, you know what? When your character dies, you'll come back in 3 minutes. All right, go. And that makes a big difference. It makes it fun for everyone. And
it does.
And it costs nothing. Back on track.
Yes. And exactly. And it costs nothing. I mean, yeah. You can. Yeah. I don't really think there's really too much to say from us on the topic of paid DMing.
I'm going to bring up something. Bling. How much of you do you like? We're talking about the cost of D&D. We've talked probably about books and stuff. What about bling? And I mean stuff like your dice and
I am a sucker for certain levels of bling.
Yes, I'm going to mention that in there because Saxy's already mentioned he has the servitor skull right in his.
I do.
Before we get into this topic, I just want to a little sidebar to the hiring a DM thing. The DM I mentioned does I think it's a sketchball thing. He lets players buy with real money magic items for their characters.
Yeah, that's
play. $10 US. You can have this +1 sword for your character.
Yeah, that's pay to win, and I hate that. I hate that because one is as a player you don't feel that you earn it, and number two is as other players you feel that this person's going to be so much higher than I am. Why am I even playing? So
at the Games Expo next month, I mean, as I said, I normally spend a fair bit in the bring and buy and come home with a few board games. I'm not going to be looking for board games this year because we don't play them as much as a family as we did a few years back. But I fully intend to come back with some interesting dice. That's one of my intentions of going.
That's fair.
I want to try things like a D30 and a D24 and D100 and things like that. And I'll come back with a few things like that because they're fun. They're fun.
Oh, speaking of which, the Goodman games. Well, this is Impact Dice, where they have. I think it's a die for every number from 1 to 2 all the way up to 30 almost. Yep. So and I'm like, okay, these are just silly. You're not going to use it in the game, but they're fun to have. And in fact, they're so much fun that my son's mother, who's like, "Ooh, that's just a nerdy game," was sitting there one day when she was going to pick up my son and start rolling the dice because she was finding them fun. And my son, who doesn't play any role-playing games, started taking my dice and rolling them. I mean, bling is fun to play with.
I will create random monster tables that will specifically take advantage of those dice.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, that's what DCC has, and then of course, of course, I got this for free, but the little cat's eye there, and different colors, and this one shows up.
Depends if that particular stall is there, if you know what I mean. I will be looking out.
I don't think of what else to really add in for the whole topic now.
I'm sorry, I was talking about various bling. What's the other bling that you want to buy?
I have t-shirts. I have a dice bag. I have fancy, weird dice. What else have I got that I don't need? I have a mug. I have a flagon that has D&D emblazoned on it. I got various D&D cups. I have a D&D D20 cup. There you go, Dungeon Master.
Oh, Dice Tower. Someone just mentioned
Dice Towers. Yes, I have the big one,
No.
the Moloch the
No.
Deceiver Dice Tower. Which
Oh,
No,
yeah.
no, I don't. I hate. I have this aversion to dice
Bags.
towers. I can't stand them. Won't
Dice.
allow them at my tables. Don't like
we
that.
Artwork.
artwork.
I have hired artists for custom artwork.
No. What for? Not for characters. I hope.
But of course I have.
For
I
characters?
hired for characters. I had a 2-year Rogue Trader 2-year long Rogue Trader campaign where they had survived for so long. I basically went, right, it's now time to immortalize them, and I found an artist and I hired him to make every single character there and then put them together in a portrait that was then meant to be this is them, the mantelpiece, the nobility house that they are playing, hanging up whenever they're in this meeting room.
Oh,
So
you
now
were the
players-
DM. You were the
I was
DM
the-
doing that.
Oh yeah, but I've done it as a player as well. I've also hired artists. I mean, I'll step over here and I've got some right at hand. Where
If a player commissioned a piece of art for their character, I would become the worst DM in the world and make it my purpose to kill that character off.
I'm just
Don't be a
holding-
Grinch.
I'm sorry,
you know
but
what?
no,
It depends,
no, I
it
can't.
depends on how long that they've been playing. You know, that's the way I look at it. If you've been playing the same game
Died after
for
2
2
sessions.
years, you've earned it. You have earned the ability to do that, to draw up the character.
If
Oh, no.
you've proved that you can play that character for 2
No
years
worries.
and keep that character alive and keep that character compelling, yeah, fine. But if you turn up with a first level character with a 20-page backstory and a piece of commissioned art, I'm just going to sit there and go, what are you expecting?
But
John,
see,
I
John,
don't-
you
I
don't
don't
have
care.
to do anything. The dice will decide that character's going down.
Of course they
John,
are.
I don't care. This guy survived for I think it was around 5 to 6 sessions before he died.
Oh.
Still commissioned something for him. I didn't care. I got that done. This one, another one survived for about half a year. This one survived 2 months, and that one survived 1 session. Some of these guys have just not lived that long, but it's because I liked the concept behind them so much that I then said, all right, fine. They've died here, we make new character, move on. Then new campaign came along, figured, fuck it, why not? They didn't exactly live that long. I'll just roll up the stats. Are they good enough to be the same character? Yeah.
I'll
Plaster
do
on
you
the
some-
name.
I'll draw you some characters. You've seen my artistic ability.
Yeah.
I'll
So,
have-
so the
I'll-
rates, I'll give you exposure for it.
Hey, Mage's Musings. You know, if he could just get commissioned, order the stick. You know, that says like Sean's Mage's Musings. Just saying, you know, if he's like, yeah, I'll do a Merlanster Gindlegort, whatever.
Merlinster Gendledor. Say it with me. Merlin,
Let's do-
Elminster. No, this is the breakdown.
Merlin,
from Merlin,
Elminster.
Elminster, Gandalf, Dumbledore. Merlinster, Gandaldor.
Gandalf. Bump. Yeah.
It's too much mystery.
and but you know, those are things that I go for. I mean, I'm not against some of those. If I could get someone to commission a really cool looking spaceship, but of course those are expensive. You know, those are kind of things. And I'm a cheap. I hate saying it. As much as I spend, I'm a cheap bastard in the fact I like mechanics, and every so often I'll buy it if I see like really cool stuff. But you know that's. But those are. But I like to mention bling because we all talk about these things and. I have seen players where they'll make their own they'll order like a $20 miniature that's custom made for their character. They'll go all out. I'm like, you know what? That's fine. But I agree with you. Do that after you've been playing a couple of games, not when you're right there.
One of my players is very good at painting miniatures, and it became a running gag because he would paint a miniature for a character, and to represent them, that character would die right away. It was like the curse.
I just want to remind you of my artistic ability. So if anyone would like to hire.
Well, you know what? I like the fact that Elfbait looks like a milkshake.
An ice cream cone, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's, the Gingerbeard's the only one with color. That's what I heard.
How come DK is a boot?
Yeah,
Because he gets stepped on a lot.
Because he's 6'5".
well, do you know what?
He's too big.
Reminds
He's too big. He's too big to fit on the page.
Did you know what that reminds me of? Is it reminds me of that we're all going to be playing Monopoly here. Whenever I
no.
see the DK booth.
I never understood Monopoly, to be honest, but that's neither here nor there.
I'm trying to think of, we talked about this stuff. I like buying the, what's it called? The little, like the cards, and I've shown some of them. You see them in the things, but I like to buy cards. I like seeing the, I bought this, which again, I would not have bought it, but it came with it. They have the little metal, almost like coins that came with it. But sometimes that's what stopped me from getting a lot of the stuff for, like I know that the what was that called, the Goodman Games OAR7, which I got for DCC, by the way. I didn't get it for the 5e version. I thought they had coins and stuff like that. No, I don't need those. I just like the specialty dice that everyone buys. I went with the. I also went for the one that they had with the 500 monsters. I think that was the other one I backed. So I'll back some things, but I've stopped trying to back all in. I just go, you know what? I'll buy this and this. Okay, that's fine. And so it takes 2 years to get your Kickstarter anyway.
Yeah.
So
I always get that FOMO going. That's what launched me into OSE. It was just sort of a perfect storm of events. The week before the OSE Kickstarter launched, somebody on one of the Discords I'm in for Toronto D&D said, "Hey, I'm going to run a BX game, OSE BX online. Anybody want to sit in?" I'm like, "Yeah, that'll be fun. I can sit in." And it was just sort of reminded of how much fun basic D&D was. I hadn't played basic since I was a teenager. And and then I'm like, this is amazing. Oh my god, I should run this myself. Okay. And then I saw the ad for the Kickstarter for OC. He's like, I'm in, and just went all in without thinking.
No, I was all in. There were a couple books I don't like. There are some that I really do. Some I feel like meh. But you're right. I said, okay, you know what? Let me go for all the little books. I do like the little books for the adventures. I didn't go read Hole in the Oak for that one. But the one that's the Plangent Mage has everything I ever want. And man, it is so nice that they, even though they have a big map, and then on the little room descriptions, they have a little map in the corner, so you kind of know where you're going. So.
Yeah, they're very well made. Like I love them. I don't regret going at OSE because I'm using it. But like when they had the Swords and Wizardry Kickstarter that was last month, I was almost tempted to go into that. And I'm like, why am I'm not going to play Swords and Wizardry ever. Right? I've got a PDF of Swords and Wizardry for reference for research and interest, but I'm not going to play it. I'm not going to run it. So yeah, I exerted my willpower. I made my willpower check on that one. But every once in a while, something will come along and it'll be like tempting. And thus the money spent into our cheap hobby.
Yes.
So
I know. Go on.
No, go on. I was going to just conclude the topic. So, but if you want to,
no, the last bit I want to throw in is like that I've probably thrown the most money at. Well, aside from the obvious, all of the books, I have bought a lot of VTT stuff, virtual tabletop maps. Purely because it saves me time with building the maps. I can just click, drag, upload, bam, the entire thing just adjusts itself, and it's just about throwing down tokens or doing any last adjustments like lighting or the likes. And that saves me time. Now I also pay for my Roll20 subscription, but that's mainly because I want the space and the ability to upload things a lot. So I've got huge bundles that I've just bought of just maps.
I mean, I guess it depends how much you value your own spare time when it comes to buying things out. Because I make all my own stuff. Some of it's a mixed bag in terms of quality. Some of it's very basic. Some of it I'm quite proud of.
It's down to what it is, because some of it is modular stuff where I can put them together and build exactly what I want. Others are pre-made things. It's down to what it is that I need at the time. But on the other point of the coin, it's just I find myself as you've seen, John, my work can become irrationally crazy overnight working in the shipping industry. It can just go from like I've got all the spare time in the evenings, and I can spend all the time for reading and preparing, and then suddenly I will have weeks where it's just I have to cancel almost all of my weekday games, and everything's just focused around the weekends, and I will just have enough time to sort of come on to this show and do this, and then the rest is just me coming home, crashing, sleeping.
I mean, I'll say this map took me about 3 hours to make.
And for if you can buy a bunch of VTTs, or if they have good map stuff, like sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm not going to spend that. I went, how many hours would this take me? How much do I get paid an hour? I'm like, this is nothing. That's the other part, is that you have to do that. But I'm going to mention, we're going to talk about this because I do buy some of the modules, like we talked about. But I'm just bringing this up for my Alien right there, and what I like about some of it is boom, okay, good, right there. I can use this not just as a for the players. I can use this for myself if I'm going to do something. That's why I said I like some of these things, and then I can add other stuff in there and go, okay, I'm going to add this module. I'm going to add this module, and they go, oh, okay. I bring this in and say, okay, let me import adventure. Boom, import it, and because I bought it the whole thing with it, it's been a lot cheaper. Like, oh, okay, look, I bring in the module. Boom, I've got this one ready to go. And some of those modules are cheaper than buying them on the PDF, weirdly enough, even though it has all the rules and everything else in it. I was like, oh, okay, cool. If you're gonna charge $7 for this, that's cheaper than me getting the PDF for 15. I guess some like 12.
I'm just going to take a quick one that I'm looking at right now, which is someone on Drive-Thru that makes like a lot of like pre-made maps that can be used for virtual tabletops as well.
Yes.
They have got a bundle that is 520 maps for $39 US. That's more or less 0.075 per map that you're paying right there.
And all the maps you'll ever need, likely.
It's more than you will need. I've got it all downloaded. I go through it regularly and just go like, which one do I need? There's so much.
I don't. No. I mean, when you're talking about that, especially whenever they start having the sounds and the ambience and everything else, it takes hours to do. Some of it is what I like about it is, and I'm not trying to knock it, but we all talking about from a battle map, and I don't like battle maps per se because they feel very limited. I do like dungeon maps where players can move around. They can kind of see what's going on. Like, oh, okay. But guess what? If I can do it where, and I think Foundry has it, and I have to play with it, but where your character sees is as far as he moves, and he can't see ahead or behind. So everything disappears. So you're not mapping. If they aren't physically mapping, then all of a sudden, and they don't remember, they're like, which way do we go?
The dynamic lighting effect.
Yes. You can set that up. Right? It depends on how much you want to play around with it, but it's pretty quick and easy. But like just the maps wise, that saves me time. The music wise, that's easy, at least for Roll20. That's incorporated in for free, even without paying for that. They've teamed up with a website called Tabletop Audio, which is everything they do there is free. Like it's there. The guy literally just makes music for tabletop, and you can download it. It's set so that it loops 10 minutes straight. Fantastic. But
not that I have it, not that I want to pay for it. You talk about subscriptions, or you can buy it straight out. Is the Sirenscape, and I listen to some of the stuff. Is boy, if you want to put ambiance and sound in the background, and again, you can tie these to your maps. Again, the sky is the limit for a lot of this stuff, but you just have to go like, this is so cool. You know what? I'm going to be playing. I'm going to play. What is the other one? I'm going to be playing Alien. Well, they have the Alien soundtrack along with the all the other stuff, so you get to hear that sound. And you just like, or you get to hear the skittering of things. You're like, oh crap, and so you can go through that, and I like the ideas of it. Not that I would necessarily. But the problem that I have with it is how much time. We all talk about the cost. there is also the cost of your own physical time of putting into this, ignoring everything else.
Yep.
Is, do you want to be spending 20 to 30 hours a week trying to build things? And if the answer is no, I'd rather be the lazy DM, and I can prep 2 or 3 hours before a game. That's where modules come in. That's where all this other stuff comes in, and that makes it really nice. I don't want my DMing to feel like a job. I want to have fun, just like the players do, and let's roll. So that's. But there's nothing stopping you anywhere for doing this.
I'm with you. Anyway, Jonathan, you want to give some closing thoughts? Your side?
Yeah. I just want to quickly reply to what Gene has said here. I like you all know I do like hand drawing maps, and what I tend to do is I'll scan them in, and then upload them to Roll20 or whatever if I'm using Roll20. And I think I'm better at doing hand drawn maps than I am at doing digital maps. I think that's something I've spent time on Dyson Logos tutorials and copied his style and adapted it my own way of drawing. And I'm quite proud of some of the maps I've drawn. But yeah, scan them in, and it's very easy to. I don't use anything more than MS Paint to edit them. But what I wanted to say, just as a sort of a closer to the topic, I think the general agreement as a hobby, if you're just going to be a player with the digital, with digital options available, free digital options such as Roll20 and Discord, this can be the cheapest hobby in the world. As in, you've already got your computer, you've already got your internet connection. That's all you need. That's all you need. Off you go.
If you have friends,
completely free.
I want to bring this up. Is even if you have friends, you can go to the local library. You can just walk in a lot of times, and a lot of times they'll have games too.
With things like Roll20 and Discord, you don't even need to buy dice. You don't even need to buy pencils. You don't even need to buy paper for character sheets. You can do it all, every little bit of it, on the computer using free tools. If you're a DM, there is at least some buy-in. Quite a lot of game systems do have basic rules that are available for free. So even as a DM, it can be free if you're willing to invest your time. Costs tend to be time savers. So most of what we spend our money on is either to go deeper into the game or to save time, or to make the game flashier. Some people like the flashy side of it. Some of us don't. And it can get very expensive if you get into collecting, or if you're a sucker for physical representations at the table. But the game does not have to be like that. No game has to be like that.
With you.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow, they brought the price down for some of these. No, for Sirenscape.
And there's the perfect button to the topic.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing is, even if you're going to buy stuff that's a little expensive, if you're patient, usually they're going to have sales twice a year where you can really bring down the cost. And if you're just looking at getting into it, I mean, the dirt cheap prices I saw on Amazon for 5e, which, while it's not my thing, $15 to $22 for the hardbacks. So even as a DM, if you are willing to work a little extra time and get stuff, this is why as a kid, I don't know how you all were, but as a kid, I got enough of an allowance that I could slowly amass my things. And it might take me 2 weeks to buy something. And it would take me 3 weeks to buy the theme folio. And it would take me 3 weeks to buy each hardback. It adds up over time. If you're one system, and some systems are not that expensive, that are just great for just about everything. D&D is kind of on the higher end at $150 to really start off. I mean, if you can buy the 3 core books,
Right, the fifth ed, you mean?
Yeah, well, fifth ed, well, even I mean, $3, first ed, second. They all had 3. I guess is the thing. Now, if you're willing to do a starter set, what are those going for? Like $25, $30 maximum.
Fifth
Call
Ed
of
starter
Cthulhu,
set?
Call of Cthulhu starter set was £24, which is about
Yeah.
$30.
Yeah, $20 Canadian for a 5e starter set.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that's. And to be fair, if your 5e works a little bit faster, this is one thing I noticed that the newer starter set did versus the older one. The older starter set did 1st through 5th level. The newer one's 1 through 3rd. But
Mhm.
I now looking back at it, our basic set that most of us started on. I assume that most of us started on this. If we were back in the 1E era, was the basic set, 1st through 3rd level. And now looking at it, listening to you guys, that's good for a few months before you even looked at Expert. So if you don't even like it, it's not a huge waste of money that you spent if you're going to do starter sets. You'll know if you like the game after about 3 or 4 sessions, and that's how most starter sets. That's about how long they'll go.
I think on that note, we are at
Is it
time.
pumpkin hour, John?
It is
We have
pumpkin
just
hour.
hit pumpkin hour. Yes, we have just hit pumpkin hour. I'm going to close by just having a little bit of a plea. Any of you who use eBay to collect and build up your nostalgia, ignore the buy it now gougers. Never, ever, whenever you do a search, filter out the buy it now prices. Always look for auctions. Always apply a bit of patience and don't believe the nonsense.
I'm going to bring one other thing.
I see so many people say things like the 144-page Datas and Demigods is my pension fund, all that sort of thing.
It's my
3 years
niece's
ago.
inheritance.
Yeah, you get as many 144-page Datas and Demigods on eBay as you get 128-page ones. The fact that it's rare is an absolute fallacy. Don't believe the nonsense, because believing the nonsense, you only push up the prices. You only feed into the fervor.
I'm going to bring up one other thing. You don't, unless you're trying to, you don't have to even buy the nostalgic stuff. There's nothing wrong with going over to Drive-Thru RPG, spending $4, and then printing it out on your own, or doing that.
Even the extra couple bucks for the print on demand.
Exactly.
Especially on a sale, you can get good modules for. I paid $6 Canadian for a bunch of POD ones, so that was a really good price.
Mm-hmm.
All right, gentlemen. It's been a great pleasure. Good
All
talk
right.
as always.
Cheers.
See you later,
Oscar.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers, Saxious. Mage, would you like to shill your channel before we go? I'll just give Eli check out Elfbait. He's been simultaneously streaming tonight's chat on his channel, and as has Mage. So Elfbait isn't here to shill his channel now, but you're here, Mage, so give us a shill.
So let's shill Elfbait one more time. Yes, check out our buddy Elfbait. He's just come back from a 4-year hiatus of not building his channel, so he's back in the swing of things.
Yep.
And as for me, I'm Mage's Musings. I do, my tagline is I do game recaps, theory crafting, and general silliness. So using puppets. So yeah, check me out. I'm closing in on my 1,000 subs. I'm at 830 almost. When I hit 850, I'm going to announce the first of my 1,000 subscriber giveaway prizes. So
yes.
So please,
anybody who's not subscribed to the Mage should get over there, because he's going to be giving stuff away. Not that I'm saying do it just because you're going to get stuff, because you'll get good videos and things. You'll get entertainment.
Oh, by all means, come over and subscribe, because you might just get stuff too.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You know what? Speaking of which, you'll have to wait more on his, Merlinster Gandeldor. You'll have to wait for more of that until Sean recovers his voice.
To my voice, yeah. Getting better daily.
You can do the hyphen at the moment, can't you?
I can, yes, indeed, minions. I can do the voice for the Demi-Lich, although not without the voice modulator completely.
Oh, okay.
But if you fancy gaming with us, we join the Discord channel if you've not already done so. Saxious is currently running Shadow of the Demon Lords on Thursday nights, so we haven't got a game this week. I run sessions every Saturday. Alternate weeks, it's MERP and OSE. So if you want to join in, they are the MERP game is more of an ongoing game, but people have joined in later. The OSE game is a friendly drop-in game. Don't worry about arriving late. Just as Hungar has just done, Hungar has just arrived late for the stream, just as we're finishing. Hello, Hungar, how are you? But if you want to play OSE fortnight on a Saturday, I start at 2 p.m. my time, which I know is early in America, but we go on for 6, 7, 8 hours. So if you want to wait till you've had your breakfast and woken up properly, come and join us and catch the last 3 or 4 hours of the session, and just drop in and have some fun, because we don't mind pausing for 5 minutes for you to make a character. That's all it takes.
I just got some money. I'm gonna say one other thing. There is sometimes you can just listen in, and you'll come in, and I got to hear the whole story about the goblins on their. Even though I'm not playing, I got to just listen on the goblin speech of what was going on with you and Gingerbeard. So,
Yes, yeah. But sorry, Hungar, you've joined us just as it's pumpkin hour. It's time for me to go to bed. But hopefully you'll catch up on what we've been chatting about, because it will all be online as soon as we finish. But yeah, drop into the games. You're welcome to come along and join in and experience my DMing. Gingerbeard's done some DMing. Mage has done some. Mage, you haven't done any DMing yet, have you?
No, not DMing for you guys yet.
You have talked about it.
I've talked about it. I'm setting up a page on my Roll20 for that purpose. So some of you remote guys can cross into my ongoing OSE campaign. That'll be recapped on the channel. So I'm trying to figure out the logistics of that. But
excellent. And as I say, Saxius has done some DMing. Other people have thought about doing some DMing. More than welcome. If you want to run a game on my Discord, just let me know and I'll set you up a channel. But I've got to go to bed because I've got to go to work in the morning. And as you probably can tell, my throat is starting to give up on me. Right. So thank you all. Thank you, chat. Thank you, everyone who's been in here helping out, getting involved in tonight's chat. I'll be back again on Friday night for some more. We're playing Midnight on Dagger Alley at the moment, which reminds me I do have to do my review of that. I did get distracted this week because I've got a new computer that I need to sort out because it's got a dodgy motherboard. Yeah, I'm gonna head off because I need to go to bed. So, night all.
Good night, everyone.